Chapter 369. Jing, why are you here? Zhou looked at Jing in puzzlement, unsure of what was going on. When he was condensing the ancient sovereign sutra life soul, his entire body and mind were immersed in the ancient sovereign sutra. He had no idea what was happening outside. Jing's body felt warm and limp. She had never experienced such a feeling before. She couldn't feel the cold energy in her body at all. Jing's pride had never been dealt such a blow before. She was extremely embarrassed as she struggled to stand up with the help of the doorframe. She tried her best to look as cold as before as she gritted her teeth and said, "I'm naturally here to stop you from condensing a life soul. Otherwise, why do you think I'm here?" With that said, she turned around and left without waiting for Zhou's reaction. Zhou watched Jing leave in a daze. He didn't believe her words, but he couldn't figure out why she was there. His phone suddenly rang. Zhou picked it up and saw that it was Sheng. He chose to answer it. "Young Master One, are you ready? I'm waiting outside the school's entrance." Sheng waited for a while, but Zhou and Jing didn't come over. Therefore, she called Zhou. "What are you waiting for?" Zhou asked in puzzlement. "Madam asked you to have a meal with Miss Jing. Didn't she inform you?" Sheng said, "Oh, she did. Wait for me. I'll be right there." Zhou was in a good mood. The ancient sovereign sutra had finally condensed a life soul. It was undoubtedly a great thing for him, so he didn't reject Ouyang Lan's invitation. He could have a sumptuous meal to console himself. Zhou dripped his blood to revive and looked at the information in-game. Indeed, when he used the ancient sovereign sutra, his life soul had turned into a new life soul. Ancient sovereign, primordial body, an ancient life born from blood and fire. A sovereign who fights against the heavens. Zhou roughly knew the ancient sovereign's abilities, so he didn't immediately study it carefully. He quickly took a shower, changed his clothes, and headed for the school's entrance. When Zhou arrived at the school's entrance, he saw Sheng's car parked not far away. He walked to the car and saw Sheng sitting expressionlessly in the back seat. He opened the front door and sat in the passenger seat. Sheng sized up Zhou with a look of surprise in her eyes. "Zhou, you condensed a life soul? How did you know?" Zhou asked suspiciously. Typically, as long as one didn't summon their life soul, no one should be able to tell who was at the epic stage and who was at the legendary stage. It was odd that Sheng could tell at a glance that he had condensed a life soul. Sheng explained with a smile, "Didn't I tell you in the past that I'm especially sensitive to things like souls?" However, if an ordinary person condenses a life soul for a long time, their life soul will be more restrained and they won't be able to sense it. The life soul aura on your body is very strong. You must have condensed it not long ago, right? "I see. I just finished condensing it before coming," Zhou said. "That's great news. Madam has made the right decision to invite me to this meal. It's a good time to celebrate with you." Sheng paused for a moment before saying, "To be able to condense a life soul so quickly, it can be seen that your talent is indeed, as old Mr. Ouyang said. It's extremely outstanding. It's already very slow to condense a life soul after so many years of cultivation," Zhou said. "Hypocrite," Jing said from the back, but her eyes didn't look at Zhou. Zhou was already used to Jing's words, so he ignored her. Sheng didn't continue the conversation as he continued asking, "How did you condense a life soul? If you don't mind, share it. I can report the good news to Madam later." "It's nothing special. Previously, our Xianwen Club and the Weiyang Club held a joint event. Li Xian invited me to have a barbecue. Back then, I observed the charcoal fire and had some insights. After I returned, I continued to study it. My luck wasn't bad, and I finally comprehended the true meaning of fire. I broke through the bottleneck I've been stuck at and condensed a life soul," Zhou explained simply. He definitely couldn't hide the fact that he had advanced to the epic stage, so he might as well tell them directly. Furthermore, it was good to put the ancient sovereign sutra life soul out in the open. The other life souls could be hidden, especially Slaughterer. Zhou didn't want anyone to know of the existence of this life soul. He had a nagging feeling that it was too strange. "You comprehended a life soul by eating barbecue?" Jing didn't say a word, but the corners of her eyes kept twitching as she suffered a huge blow. Principal Ouyang is right. You are indeed the kind of person who is extremely focused. Such a person is the easiest to succeed. No matter what you do, you can draw parallels and obtain inspiration from all aspects of life, and Sheng said. The person you're talking about is Feng Xiuyan, right? He's such a person. No matter how Zhou heard it, and Sheng's words sounded like he was talking about Feng Xiuyan. The Feng family's Feng Xiuyan? I really don't know about that, but I'll pay attention to him in the future. And Sheng paused before saying to Zhou Wen, Young Master Wen, what plans do you have after graduation? With your talent, you will succeed no matter what you do. However, in this era, nothing will be stable. Do you want to consider joining the military? We'll talk about it in the future. Zhou Wen didn't wish to continue the topic, and Sheng didn't mention it again. He drove the two of them to the Mi Gao restaurant. Ouyang Lan was already waiting for them in a private room. The present Ouyang Lan looked much thinner than when Zhou Wen first went to the Yin family. However, she still wore a warm smile as she pulled in Jing and Zhou Wen to sit beside her. Shang, sit down too. We're all family. There's no outsider here, Ouyang Lan said to Sheng when she saw him standing by the side. And Sheng didn't stand on ceremony as he pulled a chair and sat beside Zhou Wen. He then said to Ouyang Lan, Madam, young master Wen condensed his life soul today and advanced to the epic stage. Is that so? Little one, you're really a genius. Ouyang Lan was overjoyed as she pinched Zhou Wen's cheeks with both hands and tugged a few times, causing his face to deform. Zhou Wen looked at Ouyang Lan in a daze, momentarily unsure of how to react. Ouyang Lan seemed to realize that she had been too agitated. She released her hand and said, I'm sorry. I'm used to pinching little Jing in the past, so I pinched her in passing. Zhou Wen was instantly rendered speechless. At the same time, he imagined what Jing would look like if she was pinched in such a manner. However, it was somewhat unimaginable, and Jing's cold appearance made it hard to imagine what she would look like after being pinched. Apart from Jing, everyone was very happy during the meal. Only Jing felt extremely conflicted. She didn't know what the meal tasted like. She really didn't know how she should face Zhou Wen in the future. Chapter 370. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen carefully studied the ancient sovereign life soul and realized that the sun suffix behind the strength attribute had vanished just like the trajectory suffix. The ancient sovereign life soul could fuse with Zhou Wen's body and give him powerful propulsion. This was somewhat different from traditional strength-type life souls. Traditional strength-type life souls directly increased one's strength by multiple times. For example, an epic expert with 40 strength could raise his strength to 60, 70, or even 80 if his life soul gave him an additional strength. However, reaching 80 strength did not mean that one could always hit 80 strength. In fact, the power that a person could unleash had a lot to do with skills, stamina, and so on. Without training, even if one had 80 strength, the power that one could unleash with a punch was very likely to be less than 60, or even less than half. Even a well-trained Grandmaster combat would not be able to unleash their peak combat power for too long. Normally, if they could maintain their peak power output for 2 to 3 minutes without losing 90% of their power, they would already be considered extremely powerful. If this continued, their bodily functions would deteriorate, and they would need a buffer period before they could continue to unleash their power. However, the ancient sovereign life soul wasn't the same. It provided a powerful mobility system. Now, Zhou Wen's strength was 32. When he was possessed by the ancient sovereign life soul, he could constantly maintain his strength at its peak. He wouldn't have his stamina decline or strength decrease, making him a combat machine. And now, the ancient sovereign life soul was only at the lowest primordial stage. If it could continue growing, it was unknown what abilities it would have in the future. Perhaps it could allow Zhou Wen to break through the limits of his strength and produce beyond her strength. Furthermore, the ancient sovereign life soul had combat abilities. Its combat strength was equivalent to Zhou Wen's stats, making it equivalent to an avatar of Zhou Wen. This was somewhat similar to Dr. Darkness's Dr. Soul, leaving Zhou Wen very satisfied. Looking at the figure that resembled a sun god in front of him, Zhou felt somewhat depressed. The glow of the ancient sovereign life soul was too intense. It was like a humanoid creature condensed from light, making it impossible to see what it looked like. Now, there's only the Tao Sutra from the Wordless Monument and small Buddha temple's Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Which should I start with? Zhou was momentarily at a loss. The ancient Sovereign Sutra could still be related to fire, but Zhou really didn't know where to start with these two primordial energy arts. All he could do was find information related to Taoism and Buddhism in the school's database. However, the information on these two categories was just too extensive and profound. Even if he spent his entire life studying them, he might not be able to understand them all. Zhou didn't know where to start, so he had no clue. In the phone, the flower bud on the dead man tree had withered after a few days of growth. A purplish-red fruit had grown out. It looked like it was made of purple copper and was shaped like an egg. In the past, Dr. Darkness's fruits took 7 days to ripen. Zhou estimated that this one would take at least 7 days. All he could do was continue waiting patiently. He was looking forward to seeing what kind of companion beast would appear in this fruit. Zhou switched on his phone and attempted to head to the temple under the ruins. He wanted to use Lost Country's teleportation ability to enter the temple to take a look. With the offerings, he passed through the Aoyin stone statue and arrived at the palace door on the left. The instant the blood-colored avatar pushed open the palace door, he saw a monster that resembled a tiger or wolf. It was pitch black, had 2 tails, and had wings on its back. Its speed was unbelievably fast. Even the speed of ghost steps couldn't match it. Zhou pressed his finger, and the ring transformed from Lost Country's eyes shimmered. The blood-colored avatar's body immediately vanished. When it appeared again, it was already behind the monster. Zhou hurriedly sized up the environment in front of him. He was likely inside a temple. He saw that the temple was very simple and unadorned. There were no exquisite decorative patterns or any calligraphy works. There was only a stone altar and a stone offering table in the temple. There was no statue on the altar, only a stone. Zhou only had time to take a look at the stone before the game screen went black. The blood-colored avatar had clearly been killed by the terrifying dimensional creature. Even if the temple doesn't consecrate deities, it should consecrate demons. Why would it consecrate a stone? Zhou was puzzled. He only took a glance at the stone and felt that it was a mountain rock. It was about 3 meters tall and shaped like a mountain. It didn't look special. After waiting for 24 hours, Zhou went to the temple on the right. The temple on the right was rather special. Zhou used teleportation to enter, but he only took a glance. The palace was filled with metal. Even the walls and pillars were made of metal. There were also altars and offering tables, but they were also made of metal. On top of the metal altar, there was a giant metal axe. The axe head was double-edged and looked dark and cold. It was even bigger than a door, and the handle was like a metal pillar. It looked very heavy, and it seemed that no human could wield such a heavy weapon. Although he could enter the temple, he would die once he did. Apart from teleporting, even ghost steps couldn't dodge the attacks of the two mythical creatures. Zhou really couldn't think of any way to resist them. However, there was no place to hide in the temple. If the former principal and company had really entered the temple, they would probably be doomed. Zhou grinded dungeons every day and read some relevant information. He studied the methods to condense a life's soul and raise its level. Unknowingly, a few days had passed. One day, Zhou was grinding the tiger dungeon when his phone suddenly rang. Zhou picked up the call while grinding. "Zhou, are you all right?" A familiar voice sounded from the phone. It was Zhong Zia. Zhou couldn't be bothered with grinding dungeons. He abandoned the game and gripped his phone tightly. "I'm fine. I've already returned to school. How are you?" After a moment of silence, Zhong Zia said, "I can't return to school. If there's a chance, let's meet again in the future." "What plans do you have?" Zhou asked again. Although he hadn't spent much time with them, he felt that Wang Mingyuan's students were very compatible with his temperament. Unknowingly, they had become closer. "The world is so big. Naturally, there will be a place for me. Since my teacher was able to do such a world-shaking thing, as a student, can't embarrass him. Naturally, I have to do something big, Zhongzia said. What's the big thing? Zhouwen was somewhat worried. Zhongzia had an odd temper, but he was talented. If he really did evil, he would probably bring disaster to the world. Let's talk about it when we meet in the future. I have something left on campus. I won't be returning in the future, so it's useless to keep it. I'll give it to you. It's at. Zhongzia told Zhou a place. I'll send it to you, Zhouwen said. There's no need. Just treat it as a souvenir. Zhongzia hung up after saying that. Zhouwen called again, but he received a notification that the other party had switched off his phone. Chapter 371. Zhouwen put away his phone helplessly. After some thought, he planned on heading to the place Zhongzia had mentioned. However, Zhouwen wasn't sure if the item was still there. This was because Zhongzia's item was hidden in Dragon's Well. Back then, the Bureau's director had personally led people to search, so it was very likely that they had already found the item. As for what it was, Zhongzia didn't say, nor did Zhouwen have the time to ask. When he arrived at Old Dragon Cave again, Zhouwen felt a little upset. The scene of Wang Mingyuan wearing an apron and cooking for the four of them was still vivid in his mind, but now it was in a mess. He wanted to tidy up the laboratory and restore it to its former appearance, but he felt a little uncomfortable. He picked up a few pieces of equipment and eventually put them down. They're no longer here. So what if I tidy it up? Zhouwen sighed inwardly. After putting down the items, he walked straight towards Dragon's Well. The stone platform beside Dragon's Well had already been demolished. The chain had long disappeared, making Zhouwen even more uncomfortable. Back then, he had pulled the chain many times. The few of them had jokingly claimed that he was fishing for a dragon, but they had never really caught anything. Not to mention a dragon, they hadn't even caught a snake. They were just consoling themselves. Switching to the Godfiend Life Providence, Zhouwen flew down the wall of the well and stopped about 20 meters away from the well. The cold fog here was already very thick. It was almost impossible to see one's fingers. Zhouwen approached the wall of the well and reached out to touch the stone. It was bone-chilling to the touch, as though it had been frozen for thousands of years. Zhouwen wasn't worried about encountering danger. He had entered and exited Dragon's Well many times in-game, so he knew that this place was still very far from where the white dragon was. He wouldn't alarm it. After groping for a while, he felt ice-cold stones. Suddenly, Zhouwen felt something soft in his hand, as though he had touched a sponge. He couldn't help but feel delighted. After carefully groping the surroundings, he indeed found the wooden board that Zhongzia had mentioned. He removed the wooden board, revealing a hole that could only fit an arm. Zhouwen reached in and fumbled for a while before taking out a bamboo tube. The hole wasn't deep. After touching it again and seeing that there was nothing else, Zhouwen flew out of Dragon's Well with the bamboo tube. After leaving the Dragon's Well, he carefully sized up the bamboo tube and discovered that it was emerald green in color. It looked like freshly chopped bamboo, and the opening was stuffed with a piece of cloth. Zhouwen removed the sealing cloth and looked inside the bamboo tube. He saw something rolled up inside that looked like paper. When he poured the item out, Zhouwen realized that it wasn't paper, but a piece of beast hide from an unknown animal. After some processing, it had turned into a leather scroll. The workmanship of the leather scroll was very good, but because it seemed to be a little old, it was a little worn out. What did Zhongzia put here? Zhouwen was somewhat puzzled as he unrolled the leather scroll. He saw that there were many words written on it. As the words looked a little faded, the passage of time hadn't completely erased their traces. Zhongzia usually doesn't like reading, so why would he hide such an item here? It would be easier to believe that this item was hidden by Jiangyan. Zhouwen was somewhat curious as he carefully read the contents on the leather scroll. Zhouwen couldn't help but be alarmed when he read it. The leather scroll recorded a witchcraft known as spirit casting. It described how humans could fuse with other living beings, but the method mentioned in it was too shocking. It didn't conform to human common sense. If Zhouwen had seen this in the past, he would have treated it as something fabricated by a delusional person. It was impossible to realize. However, when he thought of Wang Mingyuan, who had transformed into a dimensional creature. Zhou Wen's expression turned odd. Don't tell me teacher used this spirit-casting technique to fuse with the living being in the white cocoon? Zhou Wen thought to himself, but why does Zhongzia have this? Where'd he get it from? Did teacher get it to him? Zhou Wen couldn't figure it out. After some hesitation, he placed the leather scroll back into the bamboo tube and stored it in the chaos beads chaos space. This item was definitely taboo among humans. Zhou Wen didn't want others to see it, nor did he plan on learning it. If Zhongzia didn't retrieve it in the future, he planned on sealing it in the chaos bead forever, preventing it from ever seeing the light of day again. After doing all of this, Zhou Wen walked out of Old Dragon Cave. The bustle outside Dragon Gate Grotto had long been restored. There were even more people. Many people had set up stalls outside to sell their harvests. The most popular item was the various stat crystals. Although everyone wanted companion eggs, they were too expensive, so the number of transactions was relatively low. Zhou Wen, what are you doing here? Someone called out to Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen turned around and saw that the person who had called out to him was Huang Ji. This fellow was actually setting up a stall here again. Senior, why aren't you working on the game? Why are you setting up a stall here? Zhou Wen was somewhat depressed. Instead of researching the game, he had come here to set up a stall. Wouldn't his investment be for nothing? Huang Ji mysteriously pulled Zhou Wen to the side and whispered, I'm working on the game. Some of the unimportant parts have already been subcontracted. In another 2 months, there should be results. There's no rush. However, something big is about to happen here today. Perhaps we can reap some benefits. Wait and see. What could possibly happen here? Zhou Wen looked around. Although there were many dimensional zones in Dragon Gate Grotto, they were all inside the grotto. What could happen outside? Junior, there's something you don't know. The dimensional zones in Dragon Gate Grotto are all different, but in fact, Dragon Gate Grotto is an entire dimensional zone. Including where we are now, it's a dimensional zone, Huang Ji said as he pointed at the stone steps beneath his feet. Of course I know that. Zhou didn't know what Huang Ji was getting at. Then aren't you curious why there are dimensional creatures in those grottos and all sorts of mystical things, but why there aren't any outside? Huang Ji asked, is there a need for a reason? Zhou Wen asked. Huang Ji covered his forehead and curled his lips. There's definitely a reason for everything. If there isn't a reason, it just means that we haven't figured it out. There are actually mystical things happening outside Dragon Gate Grotto, but they usually don't appear. Tonight is the day when the mystical things appear. Otherwise, why do you think so many people are here? There will be more coming later. Many people who know of this news will probably come here tonight. What kind of mystical thing is it? Zhou Wen understood what he was getting at. He believed that there had to be some benefits. Otherwise, why would people come here when there were so many mystical things happening in other dimensional zones? The mystical thing happening in Dragon Gate Grotto is called Buddha Eye-Opening, Huang Ji said excitedly. Chapter 372. Legend had it that in ancient times, Dragon Gate Grotto was flooded with floods. Cities and fields would often be flooded. This year, there was a constant downpour upstream, and the water level kept rising. The experienced elders knew that there would be a flood again, so they began to move up the mountain. A family's child was playing by the riverbank when he heard a strange sound coming from the water. It was as if someone kept saying under the water, "Open or not, open or not." The child didn't think much of it. 2 days later, there was indeed a huge flood upstream. When the commoners saw their fields and cities about to be flooded, they felt extremely upset. Although they had brought out everything they could, the field would be finished once the flood passed. There would be nothing to eat in the coming year, so there would definitely be a famine. Furthermore, after the flood, there would definitely be a plague. At that time, the medical technology was insufficient to control the plague. They could only rely on human lives to fill the gap. It was only because the area was relatively large that there wouldn't be an epidemic. Just as everyone was grieving, the child heard the strange voice coming from the water again. It seemed to be asking, "Open or not? Open or not?" The child was very puzzled. He told his parents about it. When his parents heard that, they were immediately overjoyed. They told the child that if he heard the voice again, he should answer, "Open." Not long after, the child heard the voice again. This time, he followed his parents' teachings and said, "Open." Then, he saw the surging river split apart. The flood that came from upstream split into two. One circled around the left side of the fields and the city, while the other circled around the right side. It didn't form a flood. And at the place where the river diverged, the mountain wall that was previously submerged under the river was exposed. Buddha statues and grottos of various postures appeared. Among them, there was a Buddha statue whose eyes were looking straight at the sky. The river was divided into two, with his eyes as the center line. After the flood passed, the commoners realized that the Buddha statue's eyes were closed. Only then did they know that the Buddha statue had saved their city. From then on, the Buddha statues and grottos floated to the surface of the water. They were now Dragon Gate Grotto. Of course, this was only a legend and could not be taken seriously. However, the story of the Buddha opening his eyes had been passed down in the vicinity. Huangji told Zhou that he didn't know if Buddha had really opened his eyes to save the world, but he was certain that after the dimensional storms, every time the river beside Dragon Gate Grotto exceeded a certain limit, a Buddha statue with its eyes closed would open its eyes. If he could be looked at by the Buddha statue, he might receive a huge opportunity. What great opportunity? Zhou asked curiously. Huangji shook his head and said, "I don't know. I heard that there have been a few instances of Buddha eye-opening in Dragon Gate Grotto in the past. Every time, someone would be glanced at by the Buddha statue and a Buddhistic glow would descend on them. However, I'm not sure what benefits those people received after that." He had only heard that there was a student with average aptitude who was basically at the bottom of the academy. He would definitely enter the top 3 in every comprehensive exam, but he would be at the bottom. He was lucky enough to encounter the Buddha opening eye, and the Buddha statue took a look at him. Ever since then, it was as though he had a cheat. His grades shot up rapidly, and in a few months, he advanced to the legendary stage. I heard that not long after graduation, he advanced to the epic stage. Is it that godly? Zhou found it unbelievable. I don't quite believe it either, but that's the rumor outside. I've only heard it from others. There's been a lot of rain recently, and the water level of the river has already exceeded the legendary mark. Today might be the day of Buddha eye-opening. If you have nothing else to do, wait here. Who knows, you might catch a glimpse of Buddha. That would be a huge gain, Huangji said. Upon hearing Huangji's words, Zhou felt that he should stay and take a look. Even if the Buddha statue didn't fancy him, it would be good to broaden his horizons. Zhou sat down beside Huangji and waited for the so-called Buddha eye-opening eye to appear. Which one is the legendary Buddha statue with its eyes closed? Zhou saw many Buddha statues around him, but none of them had their eyes closed. That's the one. Huangji pointed up. Thankfully, Zhou's eyesight was especially good. Otherwise, he really wouldn't have been able to see the Buddha statue. This was because the Buddha statue Huangji pointed at was just too inconspicuous. The more important Buddha statues were full-body sculptures, but this Buddha statue was only a relief sculpture. Furthermore, it was only a foot tall and was carved on the stone wall. Furthermore, it was surrounded by Buddha statues that were a few meters tall or even more than 10 meters tall. It was just too inconspicuous. If one didn't pay attention, they would miss it. Zhou took a careful look and realized that the Buddha statue indeed had its eyes closed. However, after sizing it up for a while, he didn't discover anything magical about the stone statue. Old Zhou, so you're here? You made it easy for me to find you. Why didn't you pick up after calling for so long? Li Xian and Li Weiyang walked over with a group of people. They saw Zhou from afar and ran over to grumble. Only then did Zhou recall that he hadn't brought his ordinary phone with him when he came out. Why are all of you here? Zhou took a look and realized that the people from the Xianwen Club and Weiyang Club were almost all present. Even Gu Jian was there. What else can I be here for? Didn't you come for the Buddha eye-opening? Li Xian said with curled lips, as though he was very displeased with Zhou for coming alone behind their backs. Senior Huangji just told me that I learned about the Buddha eye-opening. I went to Old Dragon Cave to pack some things, Joan explained. Then you're finally here. If the Buddha statue really opens its eyes later, it might take a liking to the two of us. That would be a steal, Li Xian said. As the two of them spoke, many people arrived one after another. Zhou saw Wei Ge bring many of the core members of the student council over. Among them was Zheng Tianluan. Zheng Tianluan didn't think much of Zhou Wan and only glanced at him. However, Wei Ge nodded at Zhou Wan with a smile, looking rather friendly. Zhou Wan nodded slightly in response, but he had a nagging feeling that Wei Ge was somewhat different from before, but he couldn't tell what was different. As the sky darkened and the sun was about to set, more and more people came. Not only were there people from the college, but there were also some from outside. After all, Dragon Gate Grotto didn't completely belong to Sunset College. More and more people came, but the Buddha statue didn't move. Ignoring the fact that it had opened its eyes, it was almost impossible to see it once the sky turned dark. Suddenly, Zhou heard the sound of splashing water. It was as though something was tumbling in the river, causing it to constantly bubble. Chapter 373. Everyone's gazes were attracted by the churning river. Zhou looked over as well. With a splash, green lotus leaves emerged from the water. After reaching out of the water, there were many water droplets swirling on the lotus leaves, causing them to sway left and right. The splashing sounds were incessant as more and more lotus leaves appeared on the river surface. They were like bamboo shoots after the rain as they constantly drilled out. Not long after, the river's surface was almost completely covered by the lotus leaves. At a glance, it was as though it had turned into an emerald green river. In the darkness, the lotus leaves emitted a faint glow. Was there such a phenomenon when Buddha opens his eyes in the past? Zhou asked Li Xian. Li Xian shook his head and said, I'm really not sure about that. However, I heard that before Buddha opens his eyes, there will indeed be a phenomenon. However, I've only heard of thousands of birds coming from all directions. I've never heard of lotus leaves growing from the river. As the two of them spoke, the river's surface changed again. Lotus flowers extended out from the water and slowly bloomed among the lotus leaves, making the river's scenery even more pleasant. The lotus flowers were like lanterns, illuminating the river's surface brightly. It was truly a spectacle. Just as Zhou was watching the lotus flowers bloom, he suddenly heard someone shout, Eyes open! Buddha, eyes open! Zhou and company turned around and saw a golden line drawn on the statue's closed eyes. Light shimmered from it, as though it was about to open its eyes. Zhou's heart stirred as he switched his primordial energy art to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. He thought to himself, the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra is also a Buddhist primordial energy art. Perhaps it will be of some use. They come from the same sect. Perhaps that Buddha statue will take a look at me. Many students and cultivators gathered in front of the Buddha statue, hoping to gain its favor. Feng Xiuyin, Ming Xiu, and Tian Jinjin also came to Zhou's side. Tian Jinjin looked at the Buddha statue curiously and said, Is it true that only those with a Buddhist physique or a life providence related to Buddha can obtain the opportunity of Buddha eyes opening? Who knows? In the past, I've never heard of those who were taken a look at by the Buddha statue having any Buddhist physiques, Li Xian said after some thought. Is there no standard? Tian Jinjin asked again. Even if there are standards, no one knows them now, Li Weiyang said. While they were talking, the eyes of the Buddha statue had completely opened. Buddhist light flickered in his eyes, but he was not looking at the humans on the shore. Instead, he was looking at the lotus leaves and lotus flowers in the river. Is he admiring the flowers? Ming Xiu pondered as she looked at the Buddha statue. From the looks of it, I believe admiring flowers is his main goal. Looking at people is just in passing, Li Xian said with a twitch of his lips. There were thousands of people along the shore of Dragon Gate Grotto. They stared at the Buddha statue as it admired the flowers. The Buddha statue was very calm. It only admired the flowers and had no intention of looking at the humans on the shore. Seeing that the Buddha statue had no intention of looking at him, Zhou couldn't help but feel somewhat disappointed. From the looks of it, the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra isn't effective. Suddenly, not far away, a figure ran to the riverside and jumped into the river. Then, he parted the lotus leaves and swam towards the place where the Buddha statue was looking at. D*MN, this brother is not bad. He has some ideas. You want to obtain fate with Buddha like this? Are you out of your mind? Have you gone crazy thinking about your affinity with Buddha? If you can obtain fate with Buddha like this, what kind of fate is it? He destroyed so many lotus leaves and lotus flowers and disturbed the Buddha statue's interest in admiring the flowers. It's already good enough that he isn't punished. Yet, he wants to obtain fate with Buddha? Dream on. Everyone reacted and immediately understood what the person was trying to do. There were people who exclaimed in amazement, but most of them mocked him. That person is interesting? Is he a classmate from our school? However, Zhou looked at the person swimming in the river with interest. They had been attracted by the Buddha statue and didn't see who had jumped into the river. Although such a method didn't seem reliable, this person dared to do it. It wasn't something that the people on the shore who mocked him could compare to. Probably. Li Xian wasn't sure either. The person was swimming among the lotus leaves and was blocked by them. Furthermore, the river water had drenched his clothes, making it impossible to tell if he was wearing a school uniform. Bam! The person was swimming with all his might when he suddenly saw a bolt of lightning strike down from the sky. It struck the person who was swimming in the water and sent him into the water. The surrounding river water rose a foot into the air, and the nearby lotus leaves and lotus flowers suffered as they were charred black after being struck by the lightning. I knew it. To dare use such a trick in front of Buddha, he deserves to be struck by lightning. Some people only want to take shortcuts. Now, do you know what's good for you? He even dares to fool Buddha. Who else would he strike if not you? Many onlookers were gloating. Even though some people were concerned about whether the person had been struck to death by lightning, no one dared to save him. They were afraid that they would be struck by lightning like that person after entering the river. Zhou found the person rather interesting. He had seen the might of the lightning, and it wasn't enough to injure him. He said to Li Xian, "Wait here for me. I'll go see if he's dead." Zhou didn't summon his arm wings. All he did was use the Dragon Gate flying immortal skill and step on a lotus leaf towards the spot where the person had been struck by lightning. Stepping on the lotus leaf, he arrived at the spot where the person had been struck. Seeing him floating in the water, he reached out and grabbed him. On careful look, he was somewhat surprised. This person's hair and clothes had been char black, but he wasn't dead. He had only fainted. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that Zhou actually knew this person. It was none other than Feng Ruoxi, who had graduated from Guide High School with him. It's no wonder she jumped down from our side. So it's her. Zhou had been attracted by the Buddha statue, just like everyone else. He really didn't notice that Feng Ruoxi had disappeared. Just as he was about to bring Feng Ruoxi back to shore, he suddenly saw a bolt of lightning appear out of thin air. It descended from the void and struck Zhou and Feng Ruoxi. "Zhou, be careful!" Li Xian and company shouted. As for the other onlookers, many of them were gloating. They felt that Zhou deserved to be struck because he had stood up for Feng Ruoxi. Zhou naturally saw the bolt of lightning descend. It came so quickly that he didn't have any time to think. Zhou summoned the Overlord Sword and slashed out the demonic astral wheel at the bolt of lightning. The blood-colored wheel of light tore out of the sword and collided with the bolt of lightning, immediately producing a sanguine flash. At the same time the demonic astral wheel shattered, the bolt of lightning also shattered, turning into sparks that scattered across the surrounding river, charring the lotus leaves and lotus flowers. Boom! Before Zhou could retract the sword in his hand, another bolt of lightning struck down, preventing him from returning to the shore. Chapter 374. Zhou grabbed Feng Ruoxi with one hand and raised the Overlord Sword with the other. He was prepared to slash out a sword beam to shatter the lightning that descended from the sky. However, just as he raised his sword halfway, he suddenly felt his ear heat up. A golden earring appeared on his ear and produced a strange force. Truth Listener. Zhou was delighted. He knew that Truth Listener had finished hatching and automatically returned to his ear. At the same time, it erupted with a strange force. This force spread to Zhou's entire body. Even the Overlord sword in his hand was enveloped by a Truth Listener's power. When the lightning struck the Overlord sword, it didn't produce the terrifying force from before. Instead, it transformed into a strange energy that was transmitted into Zhou's body through the Overlord sword. It made him feel indescribably comfortable. Not only did the lightning not injure him, but also seemed to replenish his energy. Boom, boom, boom. Lightning bolts fell from the sky one after another, striking the Overlord sword that Zhou was holding. It's over. Old Zhou is going to be blasted into charcoal. Li Xian immediately felt his heart turn cold when he saw the lightning glow on Zhou's body, so blinding that he couldn't open his eyes. Anyone would believe that Zhou would be electrocuted to death with such terrifying lightning powers. However, Zhou didn't feel the pain of being struck by lightning. Instead, he felt his primordial energy fill his body. Every bolt of lightning that struck him increased the primordial energy in his body. The excess primordial energy that his body couldn't contain had already seeped out of his pores. The 9 bolts of lightning landed in an instant. When the lightning dimmed, the spectating students and crowd realized that Zhou was still standing there with his sword raised. He hadn't been blasted into charcoal, as they had imagined. Even his clothes weren't damaged at all. Zhou, who was standing on the lotus leaf, held Feng Ruoshi in one hand and the Overlord sword in the other. His body emitted a faint golden luster, making the visual effect look perfect. It left many students alarmed. Those 9 golden bolts of lightning are so terrifying. Why isn't Zhou injured at all? Zhang Tianluan widened his eyes in disbelief. By the side, Wei Gu said indifferently, "Aren't you underestimating Zhou too much? How can such lightning injure him?" Zhou walked on the waves and brought Feng Ruoshi to the shore, but no more lightning descended from the void. Zhou landed on the shore, and just as he put Feng Ruoshi down, he saw 2 golden beams shoot out from the Buddha statue's eyes as it headed straight for him. Is it finally coming? Zhou was somewhat excited. He didn't know what the power of Buddha eye-opening would bring him. However, in the next second, Zhou was stunned. The golden light that shot out from the Buddha's eye didn't shine on him, but on Feng Ruoshi. Feng Ruoshi's charred hair and skin rapidly healed amidst the golden light. Not only did it heal, but it also became even more crystalline. Her black hair emitted a faint golden luster. From the looks of it, the Buddha statue chose Feng Ruoshi from the beginning. After all, she was the first person to enter the river. Zhou roughly guessed the reason why the Buddha statue had chosen Feng Ruoshi. He didn't feel jealous. Feng Ruoshi had such an opportunity because she had worked hard to pursue it. Feng Ruoshi opened her eyes, and even her pupils seemed to suffuse a faint golden luster. It made her entire bearing different from before. Why am I here? Wasn't I struck by lightning? Feng Ruoshi sat up and looked around in a daze. It was old Zhou who saved you. Furthermore, you were lucky enough to receive the Buddha statue's gaze. However, you have to thank old Zhou. If he hadn't helped you block the 8 bolts of lightning, I'm afraid you wouldn't have had the chance to enjoy that Buddhist affinity, Li Xian said jealously. Thank you, Zhou. Feng Ruoshi stood up and said, It's nothing. It's nothing. Zhou shook his head slightly and turned to look at the Buddha statue on the stone wall. He saw that the Buddha statue had already closed its eyes and returned to its normal state. As for the lotus flowers and lotus leaves in the river, all of them withered in an instant. Finally, they fused into the river, leaving not a single lotus leaf behind. When the onlookers saw the Buddha statue lose its divine glow and the river's surface return to normal, they knew that they had missed the Buddha eye-opening. They couldn't help but regret not jumping into the river to seek a Buddhist affinity like Feng Ruoshi. Otherwise, they might have been the ones to obtain a Buddhist affinity. A number of people left in disappointment, but there were also many people who looked at Zhou. Apart from asking about the person who had obtained a Buddhist affinity, most of them wanted to know more about Zhou. Just now, Zhou had blocked 8 golden bolts of lightning with a single sword without suffering any damage. He was like a god of war that was somewhat terrifying. Zhou wasn't in the mood to stay any longer. He told Li Xian and Huang Ji that he had something on before returning to his dorm. After returning to his dorm, Zhou eagerly took out his mysterious phone and flipped through Truth Listener's information. He saw a golden monkey appear on the screen. It didn't look like it had changed much. Its body was still tiny, but the golden fur on its body had turned a dark gold color. It was much more restrained than before. Furthermore, it had 4 ears after advancing to the legendary stage. Now, it had 6 with 3 ears on each side. They were distributed in a triangular formation, like flower petals. Truth Listener's appearance wasn't much different. Zhou directly looked at Truth Listener's stats, hoping to know what power it had used. Truth Listener, Epic Evolvable, Life Providence, Omnipotent Ears Life Soul, Evil Nullification Strength, 41 Speed, 41 Constitution, 41 Primordial Energy, 41 Talent Skill. Truth Listener, Indestructible Golden Body, Evil Warding, 9 Extremes Companion Form. Earring Zhou saw that Truth Listener's stat growth was within his expectations. There weren't any changes to its skills, but it had an additional Life Soul, Evil Nullification. He reckoned that the ability to convert the power of lightning into primordial energy was the effect of the Evil Nullification Life Soul. However, Zhou could only sense a little of a companion beast's life soul. He was unable to fully figure it out, nor did he know the exact effects of evil nullification. He summoned Truth Listener and saw a tiny 6-eared golden monkey appear in Zhou's palm. Its golden eyes suffused with a golden glow as it looked at Zhou eagerly. "Summon your life soul, and let me take a look," Zhou said to Truth Listener. Truth Listener received Zhou's order, but it didn't summon its life soul. It looked like it was scratching its ears and cheeks, as though it didn't know what to do. At the same time, a thought entered Zhou's mind. "I can't do it. I can't do it." Zhou felt that Truth Listeners will seem to be repeating this sentence. Chapter 375. Zhou found it odd. Could it be that Truth Listener's life soul is the same as my slaughter? Is it a passive life soul that can't be summoned? Truth Listener couldn't speak, so Zhou had no way of asking it. All he could do was take it to fight monsters in-game, hoping to see how its abilities had improved. When he arrived at the Poison Bat Cave, he summoned Truth Listener and got it to kill the poison bats. Truth Listener was indeed a mythical pet. Although it was still developing, its strange strength was astonishing. Its movement technique was as fast as lightning, no slower than when Zhou used ghost steps. Its pair of claws were indestructible, easily tearing apart the epic poison bats. Even the boss of the poison bats, White Shadow of Poison, was easily caught up to by Truth Listener and torn apart. To Zhou's surprise, when White Shadow of Poison transformed into a shadow state, it failed to dodge Truth Listener's claws and was torn into 2 in the shadows. Its tiny body jumped around the poison bat swarm. Although it could only kill 1 poison bat at a time, it was very fast. It killed one with a single claw, completely unafraid of the group. Although the abilities Truth Listener displayed were very powerful, these seemed to be skills it originally had. The reason why its speed and strength were so strong was because of the augmentation of the 9 extreme Essence Energy skill. This Essence Energy skill allowed Truth Listener's speed and strength to break through its limits, allowing it to produce strength that exceeded its own. The indestructible golden body made Truth Listener almost need not dodge attacks of the same level. Even dimensional creatures of a higher level wouldn't be able to kill it easily. Although Truth Listener's body was very small, it could be used as a meat pet. Zhou had seen these abilities before, but he had never seen its evil nullification life soul play any role. Seeing that he couldn't test it, Zhou transformed Truth Listener into an earring and wore it to the underground sea. Before Zhou entered the sea, he summoned the goldfish to test it out. The moment the goldfish's body fell into the seawater, it immediately evaporated a large amount of sea fire into white gas. It was like a red-hot piece of metal being placed in water. Then, Zhou hurriedly looked at the goldfish's stats and saw that his bad luck had instantly soared to plus 100. He hurriedly unsummoned it in fright. "You're clearly a fish, all right? Why do you dislike water so much?" "That's your fault," Zhou lampooned inwardly as he rushed into the sea. After switching back to the slaughterer life soul, Zhou used his movement technique to circle around the 9 black dragons for a while. In the end, he was no match for them and was devoured by a black dragon. Apart from the enhanced hearing range and finesse, there doesn't seem to be any special use. Back when I was in Dragon Gate Grotto, I could turn lightning into my own essence energy. Why don't I have such an ability now? The black dragon spat out a few dragon breaths, but when it landed on my body, I didn't see it absorb the dragon breath and convert it into Yuan Qi. Could it be that the black dragon's power is too strong, and it couldn't convert in time? Zhou thought about going to Ancient Imperial City to see if it could absorb the flame power on the Fire God platform. However, when the Firebird struck the blood-colored avatar, Truth Listener didn't react at all. It didn't absorb the flames. Could it be that it can only absorb the power of lightning? However, dimensional creatures with the lightning attribute aren't easy to find. Zhou thought for a moment and immediately thought of Li Xian. That punk, Li Xian, had the Thunder God sword, so he could give it a try. He gave Li Xian a call and asked if he was free. Since Li Xian happened to be free, the two of them agreed to meet at the training grounds. "Zhou, look who this is." When Li Xian came, he had actually brought someone with him. "Alai, why are you here?" Zhou was somewhat surprised. This was because Alai wasn't a student of the college. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been able to enter. Li Xian said smugly, "I helped him get an identification card and got him into an ordinary university. Then, I used some connections to get him to come to our Sunset College as an exchange student." "Awesome." Zhou gave him a thumbs up. This wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Alai remained very quiet and didn't speak much. Back when Zhou and Li Xian brought him out of the Holy Land, his memory had been severely damaged. He remembered very little. After that, Alai was taken back by Li Xian and arranged for him to stay at his villa. This was the first time Zhou had seen him since they parted ways. "Alai is really strong. I got him to cultivate in an essence energy art and gave him some crystals. It hasn't been long, but he has already advanced to the legendary stage. He's definitely a genius. Perhaps it won't be long before he advances to the epic stage," Li Xian said excitedly. In a sense, Alai's essence energy art and essence energy skills were taught by Li Xian. He could be treated as a student, so Li Xian was very happy that Alai had achieved something. "If you need money, look for Li Xian. If you need to fight monsters, you can look for me," Zhou said to Alai with a smile. Li Xian rolled his eyes at Zhou speechlessly. "By the way, why are you looking for me? I want you to help me test it out. Use your Thunder God sword to shoot lightning at me," Zhou said. "What's the point of me striking you? Even the void lightning in Dragon Gate Grotto can't injure you at all. This bit of lightning of mine is even more useless." Li Xian curled his lips and said, "Are you deliberately showing off? Just do it." "Why talk so much?" Zhou said. "Watch out." Li Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. The Thunder God sword slashed out an intense lightning sword beam that slashed at Zhou. Zhou had no intention of striking back. All he did was hold the Overlord sword and block the lightning sword beam. Boom! The lightning exploded on the sword as the spreading lightning caused Zhou's hair to stand on end. His body trembled for a while because of the electric current. "Holy *T, it's useless." Zhou was depressed. Why was it possible before, but not now? "Old Zhou, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you using the move you used in Dragon Gate Grotto to block my lightning?" Li Xian looked at Zhou in puzzlement, unsure what he was up to. "Strike again," Zhou said through gritted teeth. "Old Zhou, when did you have the hobby of being a masochist?" Li Xian said with a smile, but his hands weren't idle. Another lightning sword beam slashed out. Zhou raised his sword to block the lightning sword beam, but the outcome was the same as the previous strike. His entire body turned numb from the lightning, and his hair turned into an afro. Haha, Zhou, do you really have the hobby of being a masochist? Do you want me to strike you a few more times? Li Xian was in a good mood, as he was eager to strike a few more times. F*CKU. Zhou was now officially certain that Truth Listener's evil nullification life soul didn't have the ability to convert lightning. Chapter 376. Old Zhou, what are you doing? Li Xian asked with a smile. Nothing much. I'm just testing my companion beast's abilities, but I'm very disappointed, Zhou said truthfully. What companion beast? Does it need to be abused to unleash its strength? Li Xian was even more curious. However, Zhou wore a depressed look as he waved his hand and said, Forget it. I was wrong. Let's leave it at that. I'll head back first. Don't. I made an appointment with Feng, Qiuyin, and Gudian. I'll take you to a good place later, Li Xian said. Where are we going? Zhou asked. Li Xian took out a black pass and said, Do you see this? This is the pass to White Immortal Temple. It was very difficult to obtain it. Only 5 people can enter. You, me, Alai, Feng Qiuyin, and Gujian. The 5 of us will go together. White Immortal Temple. Is there such a dimensional zone on campus? Zhou thought about it carefully, but he couldn't figure out that there was such a dimensional zone on campus. It's not on campus, but it's in Luoyang City. It's a good place. You'll know when you get there, Li Xian said mysteriously. White Immortal Temple. Don't tell me it's for White Nanny? When Zhou was young, he had heard his grandfather telling the story of White Nanny. When he heard the words White Immortal, he thought of that story. What are you thinking about? The place where White Nanny is being suppressed is called the 6 Harmonies Pagoda. It's by the West Lake, far from us. Seeing that Feng, Qiuyin, and Gujian hadn't arrived, Li Xian explained, the so-called White Immortal is one of the 5 immortals of the people. Fox, Yellow, White, Willow, and Gray Immortals. Fox refers to Fox Immortal. You should know this. It's a fox that cultivates to become an immortal. It's the most common in stories. Yellow Immortal is a weasel, a very evil thing. Willow Immortal refers to Snake Immortal, Gray Immortal is a rat, and White Immortal is actually a porcupine immortal. These 5 immortals are more popular further north. We actually rarely see 5 immortal temples here, but in Luoyang City, there's a White Immortal Temple. Now, that place has become a dimensional zone and has always been under the control of the military. The passes there are very difficult to obtain. I was lucky to obtain one by chance. I'll bring you there to take a look. An unexpected gain? Zhou stared at Li Xian with an odd expression. Li Xian knew what was on Zhou's mind as he shook his head and said, Don't worry. This has nothing to do with my second brother. Besides, no one will die in White Immortal Temple. They will just suffer a little. What do you mean? Zhou knew nothing about the White Immortal Temple, nor did he know what it looked like. There's a special power inside White Immortal Temple. After you enter, every step you take feels like you're being pricked by a needle. The further you walk, the more intense the pain. Most people don't walk too deep. At most, the soles of their feet will have many bloody holes, as though they're being pricked by many needles. But if you force your way in, there will be a good show to watch. I heard that there was an epic expert who was proficient in movement techniques. He relied on his outstanding flying ability to fly and directly flew into the main hall of the White Immortal Temple. However, the moment he entered the hall, he let out a tragic cry and fell to the ground. His body was covered in needle holes, and he no longer looked human. Blood flowed all over the ground as he died. It sounds like this White Immortal Temple is very dangerous. Zhou didn't like going to dangerous places. As long as you don't force your way in, it won't be a problem. Just obediently walk in from the door and walk as far as you can. If you feel like you can't take it anymore, just turn around and come out. As long as you don't turn around and walk forward, you won't be injured again. If your endurance is strong enough, you can walk to the incense burner in front of the hall and light an incense in it. You might be able to obtain one of White Immortal's companion eggs, Li Xian said. What's the level of White Immortal's companion egg? Zhou Wen asked. The level isn't important. In fact, White Immortal's companion egg is only at the legendary stage, but its life providence is extraordinary. If you can bring a White Immortal companion beast, it might be a life-saving item in the future. Just look at how strict the military's control is. You can tell that it's definitely something good. When Li Xian said that, he deliberately stopped, clearly waiting for Zhou Wen to ask him. Zhou Wen had no choice but to ask, what's White Immortal's life providence? White Immortal's life providence is amazing. It's called immune to all diseases. With a White Immortal companion beast, it can basically guarantee that one won't fall sick. Do you know how terrifying illness is? Although cultivators have strong bodies and typically don't fall sick, there will be times when one's body can't withstand it when experiencing all sorts of harsh environments in dimensional zones. If one falls sick, it'll be more fatal than the average person. At that time, White Immortal's value will be reflected. Li Xian continued. Furthermore, White Immortal's companion beast also has the herb-seeking skill. Although it doesn't know how to fight, it can distinguish the strange plants in dimensional zones. It knows which ones are poisonous and which ones are herbs. If there's nothing to eat, it can rely on White Immortal's help to survive by eating some herbs. It's better than starving to death. There's no need to be afraid of accidentally eating poisonous herbs. In that case, this White Immortal is really a good pet. Zhou Wen felt that Li Xian was right when he heard that. Immune to all diseases was indeed a good life providence. Furthermore, this life providence had an auxiliary effect on its owner. Even cultivators couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't fall sick. In all sorts of harsh environments, it would be very troublesome if they fell sick. With White Immortal, there was no need to worry about falling sick. Soon, Feng Qiuyan and Gu Jian arrived one after another. The five of them left the school together. Li Xian had already prepared a pass for them to leave the school. After successfully leaving the school, Alai drove the four of them to White Immortal Temple. White Immortal Temple was much smaller than Zhou Wen imagined. It was like an ordinary family's courtyard house, but the style was slightly different. There was an old wooden plaque hanging on the dilapidated wooden door. Indeed, there were the words White Immortal Temple written on it, but the paint on the words was almost gone. After Li Xian handed over the pass, the five of them walked to the main door of White Immortal Temple. The door was originally open, so they could see the tiny yard inside at a glance. There was an old wooden plaque on each side, but it looked like it was used to store miscellaneous items. There were no other deities consecrated. After Li Xian handed over the pass, the five of them walked to the main door of White Immortal Temple. The door was open to begin with, so they could see the small courtyard inside at a glance. In front of the large house was a stone incense burner. The incense ash inside was almost filled. Li Xian gave each of them 3 incense sticks before taking 3 for himself. He took off his shoes and placed them at the door before walking in. Why are you taking off your shoes? Feng Qiuyan asked in puzzlement. Li Xian said, in a while, my feet will be pierced with bloody holes. I'm not afraid of blood, but it's not good to dirty my shoes and socks. Zhou Wen and company found it reasonable when they heard that. They mimicked Li Xian and took off their shoes and socks before walking into the yard barefoot. Li Xian walked right in front. When he stepped in, his expression changed immediately. However, he gritted his teeth and walked in. However, when he raised his foot, he could clearly see blood stains beneath his feet. The blood stains formed what looked like a footprint. Chapter 377. When Zhou Wen saw that Li Xian had lost so much blood, he immediately hesitated. This step was enough for him to play many games. However, the yard was relatively small, so he couldn't take too many steps. At most, it was about 10 steps. For the White Immortal companion egg, Zhou Wen decided to give it a try. Gu Jian, Feng Qiuyan, and Alai followed Li Xian in. Everyone's expression changed when they walked in. It could be imagined what it felt like to have the soles of a person's feet stabbed by many needles. Feng Qiuyan and company were considered rather tolerant people, but they couldn't help but have their expressions change. Gu Jian was slightly at a disadvantage. His feet were too big, and the bloody footprints he left behind were much bigger. Zhou followed the other four and stepped in. He was already prepared to endure the pain of the needles, but when he stepped on the ground, he didn't feel any pain. Instead, a warm current rose from the soles of his feet and entered his body. It was primordial energy that surged into his body. Hearken! Zhou felt the power coming from the earring. It was the same feeling he had when resisting the lightning in Dragon Gate Grotto. He was pleasantly surprised. He tried taking a few more steps, and indeed, he didn't have his soles pierced like Li Xian and company. He didn't feel any pain either. Instead, quite a bit of primordial energy fused into his body from the soles of his feet. Truth listeners, evil nullification life soul is really strange. Under what circumstances will it be useful? Previously, it was lightning, and now, it's the power of the white immortal temple. The two don't seem to match at all. What do they have in common? The yard was small to begin with, so Li Xian and company only took about 10 steps to arrive in front of the incense cauldron. However, these dozen or so steps were not easy to walk. Every step left a bloody footprint. The deeper they walked, the more bloody footprints there were. The pain of thousands of needles piercing through the soles of the feet could be endured once or twice, but walking more than a dozen steps like this was not something an ordinary person could bear. Li Xian was the first to walk to the incense burner. Then he respectfully lit 3 incense sticks and bowed 3 times before inserting them into the incense burner. After doing all of this, Li Xian looked into the house in anticipation. Zhou looked into the house from the side and saw that there was no statue inside. On an offering table, there was only a wooden plaque. On the wooden plaque were the words Granny Bai. Kacha! The 3 incense sticks that Li Xian had inserted into the incense burner suddenly tilted and snapped in the middle. This trip was for nothing. Come give it a try. Li Xian gloomily retreated to the side. Being able to walk in to offer incense was one thing, but obtaining the white immortal companion egg was another. The 3 incense sticks had been severed, indicating that Granny Bai hadn't accepted Li Xian's incense offerings. Naturally, she wouldn't give him the white immortal companion egg. Alai walked forward and bowed 3 times like Li Xian before inserting the incense stick. The 5 of them focused their gazes on the 3 incense sticks, waiting to see if they would snap like Li Xian's. The 3 incense sticks did not break, but they burned very quickly. The incense sticks that should have taken dozens of minutes to burn were burned to the bottom in just a few minutes. Moreover, the smoke emitted by the 3 Joss sticks did not dissipate. Instead, it condensed into a ball above the Joss sticks. After the 3 Joss sticks were completely burned, the smoke turned into a white egg and fell into the ashes of the incense burner. Alai, your luck has come. Quickly take the companion egg, Li Xian said. Alai picked up the companion egg from the ashes. It was the size of a fist and crystalline jade white. It looked like porcelain. Following that, Feng Chuyan went to offer incense as well. Just like Li Xian, the incense stick snapped the moment it was inserted. Clearly, he had failed to obtain Granny Bai's favor. Gu Jian walked over to offer the incense, but the fellow didn't bow. He just lit it and casually inserted it into the incense burner. It left Li Xian and company shaking their heads. They felt that it would be strange if they could obtain a companion egg like this. However, what left them dumbfounded was that the 3 crooked incense sticks that Gu Jian had inserted into the incense burner didn't snap. They burned as quickly as before, and soon, the smoke turned into a companion egg. If I had known, I wouldn't have bowed. Li Xian was even more depressed. Old Zhou, it's your turn, Li Xian said to Zhou, who was at the back. However, he immediately felt that something was amiss. There were 2 rows of bloody footprints behind the 3 of them, but the spot where Zhou was standing was clean. Li Xian took a careful look and realized that from the door to the incense burner, there were only 6 rows of bloody footprints. Indeed, Zhou wasn't there. Just as Zhou was about to offer the incense, he heard Li Xian say, "Old Zhou, that's not right. Coach, you haven't offered the incense. What's wrong?" Feng Chuyan asked. Li Xian pointed at the bloody footprints on the ground and said, "I'm not talking about offering incense. I'm talking about these bloody footprints. We have all left bloody footprints, but why doesn't Zhou have any? Feng Shuyan and company hadn't noticed Zhou Wan, who was walking at the back. Now that Li Xian said that, they turned their heads to look at the ground. Indeed, they didn't find Zhou Wan's bloody footprints. Zhou Wan said, I happen to have a companion beast that can restrain the powers here, so I didn't suffer the pain of being pricked. That works too. Where did you get your companion beast? I'll get one too. Li Xian widened his eyes. He had never heard of anyone's companion beast being immune to the power of the white immortal temple's needles. Small Buddha temple. You can give it a try if you want, Zhou Wan said. Li Xian's eyes widened. You actually went to Small Buddha temple. I heard that many people died there. They died for no reason when they walked in. You actually didn't die. Where did you get a companion egg? I previously read a strategy guide online. It said that as long as one cultivates the heart meditation primordial energy skill, they can safely reach Small Buddha temple. However, to enter the main hall, one has to first learn the primordial energy art on a stone monument in the temple. Otherwise, entering will only result in death. I gave it a try. The strategy guide is right. Zhou Wan made things clear. If Li Xian and company had a chance to enter, it would naturally be best if they could obtain the companion egg inside. After all, Zhou Wan couldn't obtain it himself. Be it in-game or in real life, he had been there. After obtaining Truth Listener, the three-faced Buddha didn't react to him at all. How dare you believe a strategy guide on the internet? Count yourself lucky that you didn't die. I think I'll forget about it. Li Xian shook his head. If he were to cultivate in other primordial energy arts, it was unknown if he could master them. If it conflicted with the invincible Kane divine art, it wouldn't be worth it. Coach, do you cultivate in many primordial energy arts? Feng Shuyan asked in surprise. Just a little. The main thing is to cultivate my primordial energy art, Zhou Wan said. Feng Shuyan praised. I heard that the primordial energy arts in dimensional zones require a special physique to master. Coach, although you haven't practiced in depth, you were actually able to gain a basic mastery of both. Your talent is truly astonishing. Ignoring everything else, in terms of talent, there shouldn't be anyone better than old Zhou. He can be so strong just by gaming all day. If he cultivates properly, I'm afraid no one will survive, Li Xian said. Chapter 378. Indeed, Coach is a rare genius I've never seen in my life. Feng Shuyan nodded in agreement as he looked at Zhou Wan with increasing reverence. Although Zhou Wan was thick-skinned, he couldn't bear to listen any further. He worked very hard, gaming with all his might every day. He really bled and sweated. The amount of effort he put in wasn't any less than anyone else. Unfortunately, others thought that he was gaming, so there was no way he could explain it. All he could do was pretend not to hear him. He turned around and walked to the incense burner. He lit 3 incense sticks and held them in his hand. He bent down and prepared to bow like Li Xian. However, just as Zhou Wan bent down slightly, he heard a clatter. For some reason, the wooden tablet on the offering table shook twice before falling to the ground. Zhou Wan was stunned. Li Xian, Feng Shuyan, and company were also dumbfounded, unsure of what was happening. They didn't feel any wind. Furthermore, this was a dimensional zone. Even if there was wind, it was impossible for it to blow the wooden tablet down. Why did the wooden tablet fall? Zhou Wan already had a rough idea of what was going on. It was definitely related to his life providence. Back in the Earth Temple, even an orthodox god like Earth Lord didn't dare accept his bow. It automatically shifted. This white immortal wasn't a true immortal, so the spirit tablet couldn't withstand his bow. After all, Earth Lord gave me a treasure map. You have to give me something, right? Zhou Wan didn't bow as he inserted the 3 incense sticks into the incense burner. The moment the incense was lit, there was a loud bang. The wooden tablet that fell to the ground exploded, turning into sawdust. What's going on? Li Xian and company looked at each other, unsure what was going on. Old Zhou, you sure are impressive. This Granny White's spirit tablet exploded because of your 3 incense sticks, Li Xian said as he patted Zhou Wan on the shoulder. Zhou Wan was too deep for tears. He only wanted a companion egg, but even the spirit tablet exploded. From the looks of it, there's definitely no chance of getting a companion egg. Zhou saw that the 3 incense sticks were slowly burning. They didn't snap, but they didn't burn quickly either. Let's not talk so much. Let's leave quickly. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome when the guard realizes that the spirit tablet is gone, Feng Chuan said. Yes, let's leave quickly. Li Xian agreed. Zhou looked at the sawdust on the ground and felt depressed. However, there was nothing he could do. All he could do was follow Li Xian and company out of White Immortal Temple. Zhou's feet weren't injured, so he put on his shoes. Li Xian and Gu Dian's recovery abilities were too strong. By the time they walked out, the injuries on their feet had already healed. It was as though they had never been injured. Zhou felt that the power of the evil nullification life soul seemed to be related to some strange power, but he was temporarily unable to accurately determine its nature. Without pushing open the door to enter the temple, Zhou ran back to the left passageway. Without an offering, the passageway on the left didn't undergo any changes. At the same time, a large amount of essence energy entered Zhou's body through Truth Listener's earring. This delighted Zhou. Although he could use offerings to pass through the passageway, there was a time limit to the offerings. If he really wanted to enter the temple to find the former principal in the future, it would be a huge problem when he came out if he stayed inside for too long. Now that he had Truth Listener's evil nullification life soul, he didn't need to worry about such problems. He could freely enter and exit the Aoyin passageway and replenish his essence energy. This way, his safety was guaranteed. It made Zhou even more confident in entering the temple to find a former principal. Since the power of the Aoyin passageway is restrained by Truth Listener, will the Aoyin stone statue be restrained as well? Zhou's mind began to race. In the past, he didn't have the ability to target the Aoyin stone statue, but it was different now. With this in mind, Zhou came in front of the Aoyin stone statue again and sized it up. The Aoyin stone statue was like a traveler in a cloak. It didn't have any eyes, ears, or nose. There was only a slightly open mouth, as though it would open at any moment to devour someone. In the past, Zhou had attempted to attack the Aoyin stone statue, but he had been swallowed by it. No attack was useless. Gritting his teeth, Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to summon the Overlord sword. He gestured at the Aoyin stone statue and slashed out with the demonic astral wheel. The blood-colored wheel of light instantly slashed in front of the Aoyin stone statue and was about to strike its head. Chapter 379. The Aoyin stone statue's mouth suddenly cracked open like a devil's mouth. It was about to reach its ears, and it was pitch black inside like a black hole. It opened its mouth and swallowed the demonic astral wheel. The demonic astral wheel, which had the characteristic of ever victorious, seemed to be sucked into a bottomless abyss. It didn't even stir a ripple. Zhou constantly slashed out sword beams with the Overlord sword in his hand. Every strike was filled with all his strength. With the augmentation of Slaughterer, the demonic astral will seemed to be free as it slashed at the stone statue one after another. The Aoyin stone statue remained standing there. Its body didn't seem to change at all, nor did it move. However, it was moving in a strange manner. Its mouth kept opening and closing, swallowing all the sword beams. In the next second, the Aoyin stone statue had already arrived in front of the blood-colored avatar. It still stood there like a stone statue, as though it had never moved. However, its gaping mouth was about to devour the blood-colored avatar. Zhou wasn't alarmed, but delighted. This was because when he fought the Aoyin stone statue in the past, he could only see its mouth occupy the entire phone screen and devour the blood-colored avatar. He had no ability to dodge or counterattack. But this time, he actually saw the Aoyin stone statue moving. And there was no situation where the Aoyin stone statue occupied the entire screen. In other words, he had the possibility of fighting the Aoyin stone statue. Just this point alone was enough to make him happy. The Truth Listener earring kept heating up, transforming a mysterious force into primordial energy that injected into Zhou Wen's body. Zhou Wen knew that this was because Truth Listener had blocked a certain power from the Aoyin stone statue. Otherwise, the blood-colored avatar would have long been devoured by the Aoyin stone statue like before. He activated Ghost Steps instantly and dodged the Aoyin stone statue's mouth. At the same time, the Overlord sword slashed at the Aoyin stone statue's waist with an intense sword beam. However, the Aoyin stone statue's speed was even faster than when Zhou Wen used Ghost Steps. The stone statue moved with the Overlord sword, but the Overlord sword's sword beam was always 3 inches away from the stone statue. It couldn't catch up to it no matter what. Aoyin moved to Zhou Wen's side and bit down again, wanting to swallow Zhou Wen's entire body. Zhou Wen constantly used Ghost Steps to move as he slashed out sword beams with his Overlord sword. However, the Aoyin stone statue constantly moved with him. Zhou Wen couldn't hit it no matter how hard he tried. Instead, the blood-colored avatar was nearly bitten in the head by the Aoyin stone statue several times. However, without the mysterious power troubling him, Zhou Wen had the capital to fight. He didn't find the Aoyin stone statue that terrifying. However, speed, strength, and the ability to devour everything were problems that could be resolved in Zhou Wen's opinion. What he was afraid of was the ability that couldn't be seen or touched. He would fall for it without knowing what was going on. Although he was at a disadvantage, Zhou Wen gradually figured out the Aoyin stone statue's combat style. The Aoyin stone statue bit at Zhou Wen again. This time, Zhou Wen didn't use Ghost Steps to dodge. A strange ring suddenly appeared on his finger. The eyes of the ghastly face on the ring flashed as Zhou Wen's body vanished. When he appeared again, he was beside the Aoyin stone statue. Dying. With an intense sword beam, the Overlord sword cleaved at the neck of the Aoyin stone statue that was lowering its head to bite. Crack! Following that, the Overlord sword with Ever Victorious sliced through the stone statue with an intense Feng Wheel sword flash, causing stone powder and sparks to splatter. The stone statue's head was chopped off. The moment the stone statue's head fell off, its body immediately shattered. At the same time, a notification popped up on his phone. Killed epic creature, Aoyin stone statue. Discovered dimensional crystal. Is the Aoyin stone statue only at the epic stage? That's right. After all, it's just a stone statue. It's not Aoyin's actual body. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to walk over and pick up a dimensional crystal from the rubble. It was a gray crystal with the appearance of the Aoyin stone statue inside. It was actually a primordial energy skill crystal. Zhou Wen didn't know what skills Aoyin had, so he couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. He directly got the blood-colored avatar to absorb the primordial energy skill crystal. Soon, a strange energy emitted from the phone and flowed into Zhou Wen's body. Like an electric current, it tore through his meridians and formed a new primordial energy cycle in his body. At the same time, some vague information entered Zhou Wen's brain. A notification popped up on his phone. Absorbed Aoyin stone statue crystal. Attained primordial energy skill, tongue blade, rank 9. Zhou Wen's expression turned odd. He had heard of primordial energy skills like hand blades and arm blades, but this was the first time he had heard of the name tongue blade. Using the tongue as a weapon. This is really... Zhou Wen was somewhat speechless, but after carefully studying the tongue blade, he was overjoyed. Tongue blade was essentially the same as primordial energy skills like hand blades and arm blades. They used a part of the body as a weapon. However, the tongue was too weak and boneless, making it even more difficult to use the tongue as a weapon. Aoyin tongue blade didn't really use the tongue to lick people, but to emit primordial energy from the tongue to attack the enemy. It was similar to using a finger to produce a sword beam. However, using the tongue to produce a sword beam was clearly more unexpected. Chapter 380. Although there were quite a number of epic creatures like the Jade Toad, and they would drop quite a number of good items, few tutors in the college were willing to kill them. This was because the jade toad was poisonous. If its body was sliced open, the blood and liquid that spewed out would be highly toxic. Just a tiny bit of it could kill a person. Finally, before dying, the jade toad would self-destruct. Within a radius of dozens of meters, the venom would spray everywhere. Just a tiny bit of it could lead to instant death. If one didn't have a special need, who would be willing to risk their lives to kill such a dimensional creature? Humans were humans, after all. Even if they had the ability to kill the jade toad, who could guarantee that they wouldn't be distracted for a moment? If they were stained by the venom, the outcome would be dire. Zhou naturally didn't have much to worry about. His poison stat was close to 20, so he wasn't worried about ordinary poison. Furthermore, he wasn't afraid of death in-game. The jade toad was a poison elemental creature like the poison bat, but the crystals it dropped were mainly strength. Occasionally, it would drop some high-level primordial energy crystals, making them rather good choices. Zhou arrived at the underground pool city and arrived at a shallow area in the city. Indeed, he saw a huge emerald green toad sprawled on the roof. Although this fellow could swim, it didn't usually do so. Without a word, Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to pull out the Overlord's sword and slashed out with a sword beam. The sword beam was as fast as lightning. The jade toad was too slow and couldn't dodge at all. All it could do was spit out venom to block the sword beam, but the sword beam sliced through the venom and sliced through its body. Bam! The jade toad's body exploded as green poisonous blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the nearby river a dark green. Zhou was overjoyed when he saw a dimensional crystal drop. It was actually strength plus 36. He hurriedly controlled the blood-colored avatar to fly over and pick up the dimensional crystal. The dimensional crystal was also stained with poisonous blood. When the blood-colored avatar picked it up, its hand was stained with green poison. However, the poison didn't spread. After Zhou washed away the poison on the dimensional crystal, the poison on the blood-colored avatar's fingers slowly faded. This jade toad's poison is even more powerful than the poison bat's. It should also drop poison crystals, right? When Zhou saw this situation, he felt a little more anticipation. Perhaps he could obtain higher-level poison crystals here. Zhou spent most of his time grinding the jade toad. Every drop of blood was reborn into the underground pool city, so he would first grind the baby tiger and tiger cage pass. The tiger cage demonized general was good stuff. Furthermore, Zhou wanted to use the warlock's and tiger cage pass to hone his combat skills. The warlock was indeed powerful, and it was very difficult to kill him. However, no one was more suitable than him to hone his combat skills. Typical dimensional creatures didn't have high intelligence. Their combat skills relied more on talent. Existences like the Tiger Cage Pass warlocks were very rare. Zhou didn't have a clue about the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra and Tao Sutra life souls, nor did he find a way to raise the level of the Slaughter life soul. Instead, Zhou attempted to raise the Ancient Sovereign life soul. The way to raise the Ancient Sovereign life soul was through battle. As long as he constantly fought, the Ancient Sovereign life soul would gradually grow. However, ordinary battles weren't of much use to the Ancient Sovereign life soul. Only battles of sufficient intensity could allow the Ancient Sovereign life soul to evolve. When Zhou fought the Warlock of Tiger Cage Pass, he discovered that the Ancient Sovereign life soul had undergone some strange changes in battle. Although it hadn't advanced to an evolved body, it was indeed growing. In combat with dimensional creatures, most of them rely on their talent and instincts. There aren't many truly skill-based dimensional creatures. When it comes to skill, humans are still better at it. After some thought, Zhou realized that if he wanted to evolve the Ancient Sovereign life soul, he still needed to fight humans. In school, the only opponent Zhou could think of was Feng Qiuyan. Although there were students whose talent wasn't inferior to Feng Qiuyan's, they hadn't advanced to the epic stage, so they couldn't fight the Ancient Sovereign life soul on equal footing. Although Feng Qiuyan is powerful, his saber techniques are too simple. It's just a competition of speed. This doesn't seem to match the concept of the Ancient Sovereign Sutra. After some thought, Zhou realized that it was probably impossible to spar with his classmates. However, other than students, there were many tutors in the school. They were all genuine epic experts. However, tutors typically wouldn't spar with students. Even the tutors in his class probably wouldn't work, much less the tutors who were only in charge of lecturing. After studying the tutors in the school, Zhou felt that one tutor might be willing to be his opponent. This tutor's name was Wei Feng. He was the tutor in charge of teaching boxing in the school. He was good at all kinds of extremely violent boxing techniques. Vajra palm and demon subduing fist were child's play to Wei Feng. It was said that the punch-type primordial energy skill he was best at was called explosive fist. The strength of his fist was like a bomb. With a single punch, he could blast a house into ruins. He was truly good at demolishing houses. Zhou heard that Wei Feng was a retired military officer. He could have enjoyed life after his retirement, but he wanted to make use of his remaining energy. Therefore, he accepted the school's invitation to teach at Sunset College. Although Wei Feng was now a tutor, his temper in the military hadn't changed much. He was straightforward and hot-tempered. He would give a demonstration at the slightest disagreement. Of course, it was only limited to demonstrations. He wouldn't really fight the students, nor had he injured them. Zhou also heard that Wei Feng was used to fighting in the military. After coming to school, no one fought him. He wasn't used to it, so he often sparred with other tutors. Many tutors were afraid of him. Some of them were really no match for him, while others were afraid of his pestering. As long as he couldn't win, Wei Feng would keep pestering them until he defeated them. If he was in a good mood, he would fight a few more times. Most people wouldn't be able to stand it. Therefore, most of the tutors in the school had a change in expression when they heard of Wei Feng. They hid far away when they saw him. Others couldn't stand it, but Zhou happened to want it. Therefore, after inquiring about Wei Feng's situation, he found a time to attend one of Wei Feng's classes. Zhou was now a famous person in school. Although he kept a low profile when he entered the lecture hall and chose an inconspicuous seat at the back, he was still recognized by the other students. Zhou, why is he attending Tutor Wei's class? Many students whispered in private when they saw Zhou. Chapter 381. Zhou had recently gotten used to being pointed at and discussed in private, especially after the incident with Wang Mingyuan. Such a situation was very common. As long as he was recognized on campus, there was no lack of people pointing at him. Of course, it wasn't all malicious. Most of them were just discussing. After Wei Feng arrived, the lively lecture hall quietened down. From the looks of it, the students were still rather afraid of Wei Feng. Zhou secretly sized up Wei Feng. Although he wasn't too tall, he had a very imposing bearing. His frame was rather thick, and he had a strong aura. Zhou had only seen it from soldiers. Although ordinary tutors were strong, they didn't have that kind of aura. Today, we will talk about the use of force in fist techniques. Wei Feng really liked to demonstrate personally when he lectured. Zhou saw Wei Feng take out a transparent silk scarf and hang it on a rope. Then he punched the silk scarf, punching a hole through it. Who wants to give it a try? Wei Feng swept his gaze across the students. Zhou originally imagined that the typical student wouldn't be willing to do experiments when a tutor asked them to. In the past, he had attended classes from other tutors, and only a few students who were more studious were willing to cooperate. However, the students in the lecture hall eagerly raised their hands to sign up. Each raised their hands higher than the other, as though they were afraid that Wei Feng wouldn't choose them. What's going on? Is Wei Feng that popular? Zhou was somewhat surprised. The student who didn't raise his hand come up. Wei Feng scanned the area before finally looking at Zhou. Zhou looked around and realized that he was the only one in the lecture hall who hadn't raised his hand. As for the other students, they were looking at him with a faint smile. Zhou immediately understood why the other students were so eager to raise their hands. It was clear that they already understood Wei Feng's character. They knew that the more they didn't want to do experiments, the easier it was for Wei Feng to call them out. Therefore, all of them were so enthusiastic. "Stop looking. I'm talking about you," Wei Feng said to Zhou. Zhou had no choice but to stand up and walk toward the podium. He had previously listened to some tutors' lectures, but this was the first time he had seen someone with Wei Feng's temper. Yet, there were still so many students attending his class despite his attendance. From another perspective, it also meant that Wei Feng was indeed good at teaching. Otherwise, no students would have attended his class a long time ago. After all, Wei Feng wasn't the only tutor that taught fist techniques on campus. I've never seen you before. Is this your first time attending my class? What's its name? Wei Feng asked as he tied the new scarf to the rope. Zhou, answered Zhou. Wei Feng didn't seem to have heard of Zhou Wen's name. He only nodded slightly and said to Zhou Wen, "All right, you can punch now. If you can penetrate the scarf with the strength of your fist, I can consider giving you 10 credits." Typically, credits were distributed by class tutors. For a pure lecturer like Wei Feng, he had relatively few credits to distribute, but it wasn't like he didn't have any at all. Occasionally, he could use them to reward students. "Thank you, counselor." Zhou Wen's mood immediately improved when he heard that he could still obtain credits. "It's good to have confidence," Wei Feng said with a smile. Clearly, he really didn't know Zhou Wen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suggested giving him credits. Apart from cultivation, Wei Feng would usually read the Federation's news, as well as the reports on the front lines. He wasn't interested in the gossip between students and teachers, so he didn't know anything about Zhou Wen. He did know about Wang Mingyuan, but he didn't delve into it. From Wei Feng's point of view, even top legendary students would find it impossible to tear through the scarf with their bare hands if they hadn't practiced in force. The scarf was tough and light. Punching it didn't exert any force. Without a good in force cultivation, one wouldn't be able to penetrate it no matter how strong one's strength was. It would only cause the scarf to sway. Zhou walked to the scarf and raised his right hand. He flicked his wrist and did some wrist exercises. In the past, when he practiced 1-inch punch, he had done the same exercise. However, he had used paper back then, making it easier to tear. A thin, light, and tough scarf like this was more than a level or two higher in difficulty. Of course, the present Zhou Wen was no longer the Zhou Wen of the past. After stretching his wrist, he raised his fist, hoping to smash at the scarf tied to the rope. "Student, your posture isn't right. Turn your body slightly to the side. When you punch, don't punch straight. You have to swing sideways." Wei Feng went forward to correct Zhou Wen's actions. Seeing how serious Wei Feng was, Zhou Wen naturally couldn't reject him. He cooperated with his pestering and took on a standard stance. Such a stance was indeed helpful in exerting strength. However, Zhou Wen had long exceeded that realm. Even if he was lying on the ground, he could still produce sufficiently powerful in force. "All right, you could try punching now. Remember to use the strength of your wrist and arm. Relax your arm. Don't use too much strength before punching." Wei Feng instructed from the side. Zhou Wen followed his instructions and threw out a punch. The fist struck the light and thin scarf that was almost unable to withstand any force. It tore the scarf apart and left a hole in it. Wei Feng was immediately taken aback as he thought to himself, "Could it be that I taught him too well today? This punk actually managed to learn it in one go. That's not right. Even if I taught him well and he completely understood it, it's impossible for him to penetrate the scarf without a year or so of practice." "Student, have you practiced in force in the past?" Wei Feng asked as he sized up Zhou Wen. "I practiced 1-inch punch in high school," Zhou Wen answered truthfully. "That's no wonder." Wei Feng was enlightened as he said with a smile, "That's right. Give me your student number. I won't miss out on any of the 10 credits. Tutor, can I use these 10 credits in exchange for a request?" Zhou Wen took the opportunity to ask. Wei Feng looked at Zhou Wen with interest and said, "Tell me, what request do you have? I wish to invite you to be my sparring partner. Can I have actual combat practice when you are free?" Zhou Wen asked. "Sure, of course you can. I like motivated students like you the most. After my lesson is over, you could train as long as you want." Wei Feng's eyes narrowed as he smiled until the wrinkles on his face appeared. He was really happy that a student wanted to spar with him. This was Wei Feng's favorite program. "I hope you can last a little longer. Don't try to run away too quickly," Wei Feng thought to himself. He wasn't afraid of Zhou Wen's enthusiasm for learning, but he was afraid that Zhou Wen would shrink back too quickly. Chapter 382. After Wei Feng finished today's lesson, he took Zhou Wen to the training grounds. However, he didn't take Zhou Wen to the training grounds used by students, but a training ground specially used by tutors. Students naturally couldn't come here usually. Only tutors could practice here. How do you want to practice? Wei Feng asked Zhou Wen after using a separate training room and changing into his combat suit. Pure sparring with fist techniques, Zhou Wen said. I can spar with you in actual combat, but you are only at the legendary stage. I can only suppress my strength. Before Wei Feng could finish his sentence, he saw a humanoid figure appear on Zhou Wen's body. Then, the humanoid figure fused with Zhou Wen's body, causing his entire body to emit a glow. You condensed a life soul to advance to the epic stage? Wei Feng looked at Zhou Wen in surprise. When he was Zhou Wen's age, he was only at the mortal stage. Yet, Zhou Wen had already condensed a life soul. This was way too fast. Even though Wei Feng had seen many geniuses in recent years as a tutor, this was the first time he had seen someone advance to the epic stage at Zhou Wen's age. Yes, so please use your full strength. There's no need to show mercy, Zhou Wen said. Don't worry, I won't show mercy. Wei Feng laughed as he thought to himself, to be able to advance to the epic stage at such a young age, you could be said to be an unparalleled genius. However, you are still too young. Your level doesn't represent your true combat strength. Let me give you a good lesson and let you know how important actual combat experience is in battle. Wei Feng looked at Zhou Wen's clothes and said, Do you have an armor-type beast soul? Yes, Zhou Wen answered. Put on. It's inevitable that there will be times when I can't hold back in time. It won't be good if I injure you, Wei Feng said. All right. Zhou Wen felt that there was nothing wrong with that. He summoned the mutated stone chi armor and wore it to ensure his safety. Then, let's begin. Wei Feng wasn't like the other tutors. Without waiting for Zhou Wen to make the first move, he threw a punch. However, he didn't use his life soul. Wei Feng's punch was fast and ferocious, but it was purely a fist technique. He didn't use any primordial energy skills. With the augmentation of the ancient sovereign life soul, Zhou Wen used the 7 distribution palm he had learned. These 7 palm techniques were the essence that Wang Mingyuan had extracted from 7 different palm techniques. Each move had its own uniqueness, and the 7 moves had 7 different concepts. Zhou Wen was already very familiar with them, so he could produce the characteristics of the 7 palm techniques. However, he was naturally still lacking when it came to comprehending concepts. It wasn't because Zhou Wen wasn't able to use perceptivity, but because he couldn't comprehend the concept. With weapons like the Overlord sword and bamboo blade in hand, he naturally wouldn't fight dimensional creatures empty-handed when killing monsters. He rarely had the chance to use palm techniques. Wei Feng initially wanted to use his experience and fist techniques to educate Zhou Wen, but after fighting for a while, he realized that he couldn't gain an advantage over Zhou Wen in terms of fist techniques. Zhou Wen's palm technique looked ever-changing, allowing him to deal with all sorts of situations. What was even more terrifying was that this fellow didn't seem like a student at all. He was more like a veteran who had experienced countless battles on the battlefield and survived. His rich combat experience was in no way inferior to his. Wei Feng and Zhou Wen fought for more than 10 minutes, but he couldn't find any flaws in Zhou Wen. Not only was Zhou Wen experienced in combat, but he was also terrifyingly stable. There was no hint of impetuousness in his palm techniques. Wei Feng had tried to set up a trap several times to lure Zhou Wen into taking the risk to attack him, but Zhou Wen remained unmoved. Is this fellow really only 16 or 17 years old? Wei Feng found it unbelievable. Firstly, Zhou Wen's combat experience was too rich. Secondly, such a calm personality didn't seem like something a 16 or 17-year-old should have. He had once educated other genius youths. Even though those geniuses appeared calm and poised on the surface, they would become hot-blooded with just a little provocation in actual combat. He would seize the opportunity to teach them a lesson. However, The Zhou in front of him was completely different. He was as calm as a mountain. He couldn't be any more stable. No matter how Wei Feng tempted him, he remained unmoved. Wei Feng didn't know that although Zhou was young, he had extremely rich combat experience in-game. The reason why he was so calm was partly because of his personality, but the main reason was that he had experienced too many deaths in-game. After experiencing all kinds of death tempering, he thought more than the average young man and gradually developed a cautious habit. When Wei Feng saw Zhou's expression, he knew that if he continued fighting him like this, there would probably be no outcome even if the end of the world arrived. I really can't underestimate young people these days. Since he has already used his life soul, there's no need for me to stand on ceremony. With this thought in mind, Wei Feng summoned his life soul. His life soul was a glove that appeared on his right hand. It looked like it was made of steel and wrapped around his entire right fist and forearm. It looked like a mechanical arm. You have to be careful. My life soul is called Fist of Steel. Although it's not eye-catching, it has powerful abilities. As Wei Feng spoke, his right hand, which was wrapped in Fist of Steel, struck at Zhou. Wei Feng's fist technique looked unrestrained, but in fact, it was extremely meticulous. Coupled with his rich combat experience, Zhou could barely block Wei Feng's attack despite using all his strength. He temporarily couldn't find a chance to counterattack. Now that Wei Feng had used his life soul, Zhou wasn't alarmed. Instead, he was delighted. This was because the pressure Wei Feng had given him was clearly insufficient. Now that he had used his life soul, it was likely that he was going to use all his strength. Zhou was originally wondering what use Wei Feng's Fist of Steel life soul had. But when Wei Feng's punch came over, he saw the holes around the Fist of Steel spew out white smoke that resembled steam. It propelled Wei Feng's fist, instantly producing an unparalleled speed that was more than twice as fast as before. As he was practicing in combat, Zhou didn't use his movement technique to dodge. He forcefully received Wei Feng's punch with his palm. Bam! When the fist and palm collided, Zhou felt a massive force numb his arm. His body involuntarily left the ground and flew backward. Zhou somersaulted a few times in the air and dispelled the immense force. When he landed on the ground, his arm was still numb and his palm was trembling slightly. I told you to be careful. The Fist of Steel greatly enhances my speed and strength. I only used 30% of my strength just now, Wei Feng said smugly. Again, Zhou took a step forward and attacked again. He could already sense the ancient sovereign life, soul, stirring as his heart pounded violently. Chapter 383. Wei Feng's fist technique was stronger than Zhou's to begin with. With the augmentation of the Fist of Steel, Zhou was immediately at an absolute disadvantage. Wei Feng didn't always use the Fist of Steel, but he would occasionally use it to suddenly increase the speed of his fist. The effect was even more unexpected, making his fist technique more varied and difficult to deal with. Zhou had already had to forcefully block Wei Feng's fist many times. Every time, he felt as though he had been struck by a huge hammer. His arms turned numb from the impact. Thankfully, he was wearing the mutated stone chi armor. Otherwise, his arm bones would have cracked. Despite the armor's protection, Zhou still felt a burning pain in his arms and numbness. Wei Feng realized that Zhou's armor was extremely sturdy. It could withstand his Fist of Steel. Without any qualms, he unleashed his strength and fist techniques to his heart's content. Bam! 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 Zhou immediately lost the ability to counterattack. Like a sandbag, he was completely suppressed by Wei Feng's fist. All he could do was raise his arms to constantly block Wei Feng's torrential attacks. It had been a long time since Wei Feng had such a good time. In the past, he could fight without any qualms on the battlefield and vent all his strength on the dimensional creatures. However, after coming to school, although he could also kill dimensional creatures, it was still somewhat different. The biggest difference was that he had detailed information on the dimensional creatures in school. All he needed to do was attack the dimensional creature's weaknesses to easily win. However, when he was in the army, he mostly fought unknown dimensional creatures. The thrill of life and death, the terror and excitement of challenging the unknown, was something that couldn't be compared to in school. Fighting the tutors made him feel even more restrained. He couldn't let loose at all. The battle with Zhou made Wei Feng feel as though he had returned to the time when he was in the army. Zhou was like an unknown dimensional creature, making Wei Feng want to find his weakness and completely defeat him. At that moment, Wei Feng was like a ferocious beast, constantly releasing terrifying attacks. From the beginning to now, although Zhou had been completely suppressed, his palm technique didn't become chaotic. It was still terrifyingly stable. Despite being suppressed, he still managed to block all of Wei Feng's attacks, making Wei Feng increasingly want to break through Zhou's defense. Wei Feng became more and more serious, almost forgetting that it was just a practice. It was as though he was completely engrossed in it, pushing his abilities to the limit. Bang! Bang! It was unknown how many punches Zhou's arms and palms had endured. Wei Feng's fists were like a storm as they constantly bombarded him, especially the right hand that wore the fist of steel. Every time it struck Zhou's arm, an explosive force would cause Zhou's arm to nearly shatter through the stone armor. Even the stone armor formed by the mutated stone chi was beginning to crack under the constant bombardment. If this continued, it would most likely shatter. Under such pressure, Zhou still didn't use his movement techniques. He continued using his palm techniques to resist Wei Feng. He could vaguely sense that the ancient sovereign life soul was stirring. The heart in his chest that was attached to the ancient sovereign life soul was beating vigorously. The rate of beating increased, and the speed increased. It was as though it was a racing engine that was starting up. Zhou's entire body was filled with energy as his desire to fight grew. Under Wei Feng's forceful suppression, he didn't feel any fear. Instead, he became more and more excited. That excitement came mostly from the ancient sovereign life soul. Under the intense beating of his heart, Zhou felt as though all the blood vessels in his body had turned into highways. His blood flowed at high speeds, rubbing against the walls of his blood vessels, causing the temperature of his blood to rise as though it was about to ignite. Dong, 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 dong. Under the effects of the ancient sovereign life soul, his heart beat more and more violently. It made Zhou feel as though his body had become a volcano. It was as though a force would erupt at any moment. Wei Feng became more and more excited. Zhou's stability and the sturdiness of the mutated stone chi's armor allowed him to completely unleash his abilities. Apart from not using any primordial energy skills, he had already pushed his abilities to their limits. I don't believe that I can't break through your defense. Wei Feng felt as though he had returned to the time when he was fighting the powerful dimensional creatures in the dimensional zones. His fist techniques became more and more tricky, ferocious, and lethal. At that moment, Zhou's expression remained calm, but there seemed to be flames burning in his eyes. He constantly brandished his arms as he constantly retreated. Under Wei Feng's crazy attacks, many cracks had already appeared on the arm of the mutated stone chi's armor. If Zhou hadn't deliberately used different spots to block Wei Feng's fist of steel, allowing it to continuously strike the same spot, the mutated stone chi's armor would have long shattered. Although Zhou had already controlled the position of his blocking, the armor was already filled with cracks. If he continued withstanding the attacks, the left and right armors would probably shatter completely. However, Zhou didn't retract the mutated stone chi armor. He chose to continue fighting. He could sense that the ancient sovereign life soul was about to reach a critical point. If he were to retreat now, all his previous efforts would be for naught. Crack! Crack! Under Wei Feng's attacks, the armor emitted a subtle cracking sound. Furthermore, the sounds increased as many visible cracks appeared on the armor. Tiny pieces of gravel shot out from the cracks, as the cracks spread out like a spider web. Zhou's eyes were like fire as he continued brandishing his arms to block Wei Feng's crazy attacks. Just a little more, just a little more. Zhou Wen felt that the power in his body was like a volcano that was about to erupt, but it couldn't erupt. It was as though there was a huge rock blocking the volcanic crater, preventing the boiling magma from spewing out. Crack! Zhou Wen's arm blocked another punch from Wei Feng's right hand. An egg-sized piece of armor on the outer side of his right arm shattered, turning into rubble that splattered out. Like a butterfly effect, the armor on his arm completely shattered, exposing Zhou Wen's arm. Without the protection of the armor, the powerful punch struck Zhou Wen's arm. Immediately, Zhou Wen's arm bones trembled like a bowstring, as though they were about to snap. At that moment, magma seemed to gush out of Zhou Wen's eyes, causing his pupils to turn the scarlet color of scorching magma. His entire body began to emit a terrifying, scorching aura. It was as though a scorching power spewed out from his body, causing the air around him to distort. From afar, it was as though there were invisible flames burning outside his body. Chapter 384. The armor on Zhou Wen's arm shattered. Wei Feng was alarmed as he hurriedly stopped his attack. He couldn't help but feel regret. He had been too serious while practicing with a student. If Zhou Wen's companion beast died, because of this, Wei Feng wouldn't know what to do. If news of a tutor killing his student's companion beast were to spread, he would probably be treated as a representative of a violent teacher. Wei Feng looked at Zhou Wen, wanting to ask if he was all right. The companion beast was secondary. Zhou Wen's uninjured state was the most important thing. However, when Wei Feng's gaze landed on Zhou Wen, he was alarmed. He saw that Zhou Wen's body was emitting a scorching aura. The heat seemed to distort the air around him, making it look like his body was burning with transparent flames. The danger signal sounded an alarm in Wei Feng's heart. This was an intuition that Wei Feng had honed on the battlefield. Only when he encountered extremely dangerous creatures would he have such a feeling. But now, Zhou Wen had made Wei Feng sense danger. "Tutor, please continue." Zhou Wen's body trembled slightly. It wasn't because of pain or fear, but because of the powerful beating of his heart that caused his blood to flow rapidly. It affected his body involuntarily. Every time his heart beat, his entire body trembled. And now, his heart was beating as fast as a piston, making Zhou Wen's body look like it was trembling. This didn't affect Zhou Wen's control of his body. To be precise, he had never felt as good as he did now. His entire body was filled with explosive power, as though he was accumulating strength in front of the starting point. The engine kept roaring, and from time to time, his body would charge forward slightly. Without waiting for Wei Feng to punch, Zhou Wen clenched his fist and threw a punch at Wei Feng. This was only a subconscious action of Zhou Wen. Although he knew the 7 distribution palm, he subconsciously felt that only by clenching his fist could he make his palm that was about to explode feel more comfortable. With a punch, the surrounding air seemed to distort from the heat, leaving behind a blurry and distorted afterimage. Zhou Wen's body and fist had already arrived in front of Wei Feng. Wei Feng's expression turned solemn as steam spewed out from the fist of steel's blowhole, causing his fist to quickly strike out to meet Zhou Wen's fist. Bang! When the fists collided, Zhou Wen retreated 4 to 5 steps before stopping. As for Wei Feng, he only staggered a little without taking half a step back. However, Wei Feng's face revealed a look of surprise as he sized up Zhou Wen in disbelief. After fighting Zhou Wen for so long, he had a rough understanding of Zhou Wen. He knew that Zhou Wen's strength wasn't weak, probably in the 30s. This strength was already very close to his, but with the augmentation of Fist of Steel, his fist strength was greatly enhanced. It was far from what Zhou Wen's strength could withstand. Previously, Zhou Wen had been able to fight him mainly because of the defense of the mutated stone cheese armor. However, in that punch, Zhou Wen had used the fist that had shattered his bracer. Without the protection of the armor, Zhou Wen had only been pushed back 4 to 5 steps. His strength had clearly increased tremendously in such a short period of time. However, Without stat crystals, it was impossible for his strength stat to increase unless he used a strength-enhancing primordial energy skill. However, Zhou didn't use any primordial energy skills. Just like before, he was purely using boxing techniques to fight him. Could it be a life soul? Wei Feng looked at Zhou, whose body seemed to be burning with invisible flames. He felt that his entire body was glowing and heating up, and the signs of danger were becoming more and more obvious. Without giving Wei Feng any time to think, Zhou threw another punch. One punch after another, he kept throwing out punches as though he had gone mad. Wei Feng's fighting spirit was stirred once again as he brandished his fists to fight Zhou. The Fist of Steel unleashed its full power, producing unparalleled fist speed and strength. Like steel meteors, he sent Zhou retreating again and again. However, Wei Feng could sense that Zhou strength was increasing. His speed was also increasing, and his movements were becoming smoother and smoother. Fire! Wei Feng felt as though there was a flame burning on Zhou's body. It wasn't a real flame, but Wei Feng had such a feeling. As the flames burned, Zhou's body, no, it should be said that his entire life was emitting light and heat. It became more and more dazzling, making one's heart palpitate. My life, my blood, my soul, to live for the living. Even if I have to spill all my blood, bury all my bones. I will fight for a chance of survival in this dark, heartless, and cold land for all living beings. In the ancient sovereign life soul, there seemed to be an ancient will roaring. His blood was boiling. This wasn't just an adjective. Zhou really felt as though all the blood in his body was burning. It was as though he had infinite motivation, making him stronger and faster. Every inch of his cells seemed to emit light and heat. Bam! 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 Zhou's fists constantly clashed with Wei Feng. From being at a disadvantage in the beginning, he was slowly able to resist Wei Feng and was no longer forced back by him. Then, Wei Feng's fist without the Fist of Steel was suppressed by Zhou. The force on Zhou's body grew stronger and stronger. Bam! When the fists clashed again, Zhou's bare fist seemed to emit light and heat like the sun. When it collided with the Fist of Steel, it wasn't blasted away. Instead, Wei Feng's body involuntarily swayed as he took half a step back. This fellow. Wei Feng's eyes wavered as he looked at Zhou in disbelief. He had been in the military for 30 years and had been a tutor for 6 years. He had seen countless experts and geniuses, but he had only seen one person with such strength at Zhou's age. Zhou was the second. In a crazy battle, Wei Feng constantly retreated. With every step he took, he felt that Zhou's figure seemed to grow taller. The body that emitted light and heat became taller and taller in his eyes, becoming more and more unstoppable. At that moment, the invisible flames on Zhou's body condensed into corporeal light. His entire body was like a sun that emitted light. The ancient sovereign life soul also pushed Zhou's body, breaking through the shackles of a certain limit and erupting with terrifying power. Boom! Zhou's fist broke through the speed of sound as it rubbed against the air, producing light and heat. It was like a dazzling sun as it blasted at Wei Feng. The alarm in Wei Feng's heart sounded. Looking at the fist that was magnifying like a sun in his pupils, he didn't hesitate to use his best primordial energy skill, Explosive Fist. With explosive power, the Fist of Steel collided with Zhou's fist. Boom! The terrifying force formed a terrifying explosion and shockwave, with Zhou and Wei Feng's fists at the center. The special 40-centimeter thick rubber buffer layer on the ground was torn apart by the explosive force. A huge crater was blasted open in the cement and reinforced concrete below. Chapter 385. Wei Feng felt his arm, which was wearing the Fist of Steel, tremble as his legs went limp. He looked at Zhou opposite him with an inexplicable shock. Despite using a primordial energy skill, he was only able to fight Zhou to a draw. He failed to gain the upper hand. The strength that erupted from Zhou Wen's body was astonishing. Looking at Zhou Wen, who was emitting light and heat like the sun, Wei Feng suddenly felt that he was really old. This world was really the world of the young. Their youth and vitality was something he didn't possess. Zhou Wen felt his heart rumble as all the strength in his body surged with the flow of his blood, propelling him to deliver a second punch. Wei Feng could only swing his fist again and unleash his primordial energy skill, clashing with Zhou Wen's fists again and again. This time it was fatal. Zhou Wen was purely relying on the power of his life soul, without using his own primordial energy, but Wei Feng had to rely on his primordial energy skill to fight Zhou Wen. Primordial energy skills relied on the power produced by a burst of primordial energy. Wei Feng didn't have the slaughterer life soul to provide him with infinite primordial energy, so it was impossible for him to constantly unleash primordial energy skills. After delivering more than 10 explosive punches, he felt his primordial energy drying up. Wei Feng originally believed that Zhou Wen's explosive strength definitely wouldn't be too stable. Otherwise, his body wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, to his surprise, Zhou Wen remained lively after more than 10 punches, as though he had infinite energy. The most terrifying thing was that the average person's explosive strength was curved. It was impossible to maintain it at its peak, but Zhou Wen's explosive strength seemed to be in a straight line, maintaining its peak position. Wei Feng felt his arm go numb, and he was almost unable to lift it. If this continued, his arm would probably be broken. Zhou Wen was completely immersed in the explosive power of the ancient sovereign life soul as he delivered punch after punch. He could sense that the ancient sovereign life soul had advanced and was likely an evolved body. Zhou Wen excitedly threw another punch at Wei Feng, but he suddenly saw Wei Feng stop. He looked in the direction of the training room's door and said in surprise, "We're using the training room. Come back later." Zhou Wen couldn't help but stop punching. He turned his head to look at the door, but he saw that it was still closed. There was no one. Bam! In the next second, Zhou Wen felt his helmet-covered face suffer a heavy blow. His head was forced to the side as his body flew out, slamming into the rubber buffer of the training room's wall. Wei Feng said in all seriousness, "Zhou Wen, it looks like you lack combat experience. You can't even defend against such a simple scheme. If you were on a real battlefield, you would already be dead." Wei Feng said in all seriousness, "Zhou Wen, it looks like you lack combat experience. You can't even defend against such a simple scheme. If you were on a real battlefield, you would already be dead. I've taught you such an important lesson today. You must remember it well. Next time, you can't make the same mistake again. All right, today's practice ends here. Mr. of Dong Lord I Song, Feng, and then Master. Let's call it a day. You must be tired after training for so long. Let's continue another day," Wei Feng said as he walked. "Feng isn't. Teacher, I win. Another day. As Wei Feng walked, he took out his phone and placed it by his ear. "Hello, daughter. Why are you looking for me? What? Something happened at home. Okay. I'll rush back now, I'm sorry. Although I really want to continue practicing with you, there's something urgent at home. Let's do it another day. I'll practice another day." As Wei Feng spoke, he quickly walked out of the training room and soon disappeared. Zhou Wen felt somewhat regretful. He hadn't completely vented the vigorous energy in his body, so he felt a little uncomfortable. However, since there was no opponent, Zhou Wen had no choice but to let the ancient sovereign life soul leave his body and float in front of him. The ancient sovereign life soul was still in the form of a projection, but the projection had become clearer, as though it was about to condense into something corporeal. The ancient sovereign life soul was like a floating, human-shaped sun. In the future, Zhou Wen didn't need to be afraid of the dark no matter where he went. As long as he had the ancient sovereign life soul, he could illuminate any dark place. He took out the mysterious phone and looked at the information of the ancient sovereign life soul after evolved. Defy ancient sovereign. Evolved body, an ancient life born from blood and fire, a sovereign that fights against the heavens. The evolved ancient sovereign had become the defy ancient sovereign. Although the information didn't change, Zhou knew that the ancient sovereign's abilities had undergone a substantial change. The evolution of a life soul was very unconventional. Even people who cultivated the same primordial energy art would condense different life souls due to their different physiques and understandings. As for the evolution of a life soul, it would further widen the differences due to the difference in personal understanding and growth. Zhou could sense that not only could the Defy ancient sovereign increase his strength and speed, but could also provide him with an endless supply of energy. As for the exact number, he would probably need to test it on a testing device to know. The game could only display the basic numbers. The numbers augmented by the life soul wouldn't be displayed, so Zhou didn't know what his various stats were like under the augmentation of the Defy ancient sovereign. Indeed, it's more interesting to practice with humans. I'll practice with Counselor Wei next time. Zhou unsummoned the mutated stone Qi and realized that one of its legs had been broken. Thankfully, the mutated stone Qi hadn't been shattered. The companion egg was a pure energy body. As long as he had primordial energy crystals to replenish his primordial energy, he could slowly recover in the future. The immense power brought about by the Defy ancient sovereign's advancement to an evolved body made Zhou want to advance Slaughterer even more. If Slaughterer could advance to an evolved body, or even a perfect body, he didn't know what kind of power it would give him. Unfortunately, Zhou still hadn't found a clue to advancing to Slaughterer. All he could do was evolve the Defy ancient sovereign, hoping to advance it to a perfect body. However, Zhou later looked for Wei Feng a few times, but Wei Feng used the excuse of having something to do at home to leave in a hurry. He didn't give Zhou a chance to spar with him again. Apart from Wei Feng, Zhou couldn't find anyone else to spar with. All he could do was temporarily put this matter aside. As he grinded in-game dungeons, he read the works of Buddhism and Taoism, hoping to condense a life soul for the other two primordial energy arts. When Zhou arrived at the poison WRM pool again and killed the poison WRM, another primordial energy skill crystal dropped. Zhou was already numb to it. The chance of the poison WRM dropping in primordial energy skill was rather high, but it was basically the 3 poison dragon fingers. The missing poison dragon finger 3 never dropped. However, when Zhou let the blood-colored avatar absorb the primordial energy skill crystal, he was surprised to discover that the system had informed him that he had comprehended Poison Dragon Finger 3. It immediately perked Zhou up. Chapter 386. It actually dropped Poison Dragon Finger 3. Zhou was immediately overjoyed. He had been grinding the Poison WYRM for so long that he was about to vomit. This was the first time Poison Dragon Finger 3 had dropped. With all 5 Poison Dragon Fingers gathered, there weren't any special changes in the Primordial Energy skill column. The 5 Poison Dragon Fingers were listed separately, proving that they weren't the same Primordial Energy skill. Zhou attempted to use the 5 Poison Dragon Fingers together and immediately saw the blood-colored avatar's 5 fingers turn pitch black. This was no different from before, but what happened next delighted Zhou. The blackness on the 5 fingers spread to the blood-colored avatar's palm. Moments later, the blood-colored avatar's entire palm turned black. At the same time, a notification popped up in-game, acquired Poison Dragon Palm. Zhou looked at his skill column and realized that the 5 Poison Dragon Fingers had vanished. There was an additional Poison Dragon Palm. Poison Dragon Palm, rank 10 epic primordial energy skill. Zhou was truly alarmed. This was the first time he had seen a natural rank 10 primordial energy skill. According to what he knew, the primordial energy skills learned from the primordial energy skill crystal were only at rank 9. To reach rank 10, he had to comprehend them himself. However, the Poison Dragon Palm was at rank 10. There was no need for him to comprehend it himself. It was truly impressive. Zhou thought about where to test the might of the Poison Dragon Palm that he had painstakingly obtained. He immediately searched the underground pool city for a while, hoping to find a sword fong fish or jade toad to test his palm on. However, to his surprise, he encountered a relatively rare electric eel. Although it couldn't compare to Wang Fei's mutated electric eel, it was enough for him to test his palm. As an epic primordial energy skill, Zhou didn't feel any powerful might when he condensed the poison dragon palm. It was similar to when he used the poison dragon finger in the past. There was no special reaction. There was no wind from the palm, nor was there any divine light. There wasn't even any poisonous gas. Apart from his palm turning black, there was nothing special about it. He couldn't release his strength either. Don't tell me it's still as useless as the poison dragon finger? As Zhou thought to himself, he had already used ghost steps to arrive above the electric eel and struck its back with his palm. Water splashed as Zhou's palm struck the electric eel's back, causing it to sink into the water. Zhou could see that his palm hadn't even managed to remove a single scale. Instead, half of his body was numbed by the lightning on the electric eel's body as he nearly fell into the water. What the heck? This is a primordial energy skill that took so long to figure out? Zhou was instantly depressed. He saw the surface of the water surge as the electric eel rapidly swam into the distance. Zhou wasn't even in the mood to chase. After grinding for so long, he still had some anticipation. He never expected the poison dragon palm to be so useless. It was practically an upgraded version of the trash poison dragon finger. However, the electric eel that was fleeing underwater suddenly stopped moving after swimming about 100 meters. Before long, Zhou saw the electric eel float up with its belly up. At the same time, a notification popped up in-game. Killed epic creature, electric eel. Discovered dimensional crystal. Zhou immediately widened his mouth into an O shape. When he saw a dimensional crystal drop from the electric eel's corpse, he hurriedly rushed over and picked it up before it sank to the bottom of the water. This poison dragon palm. Interesting. Zhou was somewhat astonished. A single palm strike had killed the electric eel. Such might was indeed interesting. Furthermore, the power of the poison dragon palm was clearly related to poison. It wasn't a palm strike in the traditional sense. The crystal in Zhou's hand only had a low value of +3, but when he took a careful look, the dimensional crystal dropped by the electric eel was actually +3 to his electric stat and not his basic stats. After letting the blood-colored avatar absorb the electric stat crystal, Zhou couldn't help but tremble as electric currents coursed through his body. He looked at the additional electric stat in his stats. Although it was only 3 points, Zhou was already very satisfied. After all, the drop rate of special stat crystals was very low. For it to drop from killing an electric eel, his luck was pretty good. From the looks of it, my luck has been rising recently. It's time to grind the baby tiger again. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to make a trip to Binyang Cave, but he naturally returned empty-handed. Thankfully, Zhou wasn't discouraged. After switching dungeons, he went to the Zhuolu ruins. Zhou's target this time was the 9-chained black dragons. He wanted to use them to test how powerful the poison dragon palm was and how high its upper limits were. However, being able to poison the electric eel to death wasn't of much use to Zhou. With the Overlord sword and transcendent flying immortal, killing the electric eel was as easy as cutting vegetables. There was no need for him to get that close, nor did he need to use his palm to directly touch the electric eel. The reason why he wanted to use the 9 black dragons to test his palm was that it was difficult for Zhou to even touch the other mythical creatures. Only when the 9 black dragons were chained and their mobility was restricted would Zhou have a chance of hitting them. Previously, Zhou had attempted to use the Overlord sword and Lost Country's teleportation ability to stab a black dragon, but the Overlord sword had only managed to pierce a tiny bit of the sword tip. It couldn't even completely pierce through the dragon scales, much less kill the black dragon. Unless Zhou could stab the same spot on the black dragon's body hundreds or thousands of times in a row, it was impossible for him to kill it. However, under the siege of the 9 black dragons, even though their movements were restricted to a certain extent, they were still mythical creatures. It was impossible for Zhou to last too long under their siege. It would be considered lucky if he could survive a few strikes, much less a few hundred strikes. However, if the poison dragon palm was really useful and could poison the black dragon to death, Zhou had an idea that he might have a chance of killing it. Of course, this way, he couldn't rely on Lost Country's teleportation to approach the black dragon. He had to use Lost Country to escape after striking the black dragon with the poison dragon palm. If the blood-colored avatar died, it would be useless even if the poison dragon palm could really poison the black dragon to death. Once the blood-colored avatar died, the dungeon would respawn. What was the point of poisoning the black dragon? Therefore, after some thought, Zhou decided that he could only rely on his movement technique to approach the black dragon and deliver a poison dragon palm to it. Then, he could rely on Lost Country's teleportation ability to escape and wait for the black dragon to be poisoned to death. This was the only way he could kill a mythical creature. When he arrived at the underground seaside again, Zhou took a deep breath and switched his life soul to Slaughterer. Then, he leaped down and dove into the sea. Not long after swimming in the sea, he saw 9 black dragons pulling a war chariot from the bottom of the sea. The black dragons let out strange dragon roars, causing the seawater to tremble uneasily. Chapter 387. Although the Defy Ancient Sovereign could give Zhou more strength than Slaughterer, the Defy Ancient Sovereign's strength was too ferocious. It was suitable for head-on battles. Now, Zhou wasn't strong enough to fight the black dragon head-on. He could only rely on tricks to win, so Zhou chose to use the Slaughterer life soul. Although the increase in strength provided by Slaughterer wasn't as good as the Defy Ancient Sovereign's, the characteristic of infinite essence energy was what Zhou needed the most. When the 9 black dragons approached, Zhou chose a relatively complicated spot at the bottom of the sea. He relied on the underwater mountain as cover, preventing the black dragons from attacking him immediately. When the 9 black dragons pulled the war chariot around the underwater mountain, Zhou used the 9 dragons' art and ghost steps he had comprehended. He quickly moved through the seawater like a humanoid dragon beast, dodging the devouring of the black dragons in front of him. Before the 9 black dragons surrounded him, he rushed to the bottom of the war chariot. To approach the black dragon's body directly, Zhou didn't have the ability to do so unless he used teleportation. However, it was different with the war chariot's cover. The 9 black dragons were chained up, so it wasn't convenient for them to crawl to the bottom of the war chariot. Their mobility was further weakened. Zhou hid under the war chariot, and when he saw a black dragon's head extend down, he struck out with poison dragon palm. The black dragon's reaction was just too fast. Zhou was already close enough, but it still reacted. It let out a dragon roar, and the terrifying sound wave sent Zhou's body flying like the seawater. The poison dragon palm failed to touch it at all. The blood-colored avatar's body flew out with the water uncontrollably. Before Zhou could stabilize the blood-colored avatar, a few black dragons had already pounced forward and surrounded him. A black dragon swallowed the blood-colored avatar amidst the struggle. The game screen instantly turned black. The poison dragon palm requires the palm to directly touch the body to be effective. This isn't good. If I can injure someone across space, it will be much easier. Zhou had no choice but to drip his blood to respawn and start over. This time, Zhou learned from his previous experience and didn't choose to touch the black dragon's heads. Instead, he used the war chariot's cover to dodge the black dragon's attacks and flipped to the back of the war chariot. When a black dragon circled around, he turned around and charged at the black dragon's body. His poison dragon palm struck the black dragon's scales. After the palm succeeded, Zhou's figure was completely exposed. The 9 black dragons formed an encirclement, making it impossible for Zhou to escape. Zhou immediately switched to the God-Fiend era primordial energy art as Lost Country appeared on his finger. Just as a black dragon sucked the blood-colored avatar to its mouth and half of its body entered the dragon's mouth, the blood-colored avatar's body suddenly vanished, leaving the 9 black dragons stunned. However, Lost Country's teleportation distance was too low. The 9 black dragons quickly discovered Zhou, who hadn't run far, and roared as they chased after him. Zhou swam towards the surface with all his might, but in the water, the efficiency of ghost steps was greatly reduced. Infinite ghost steps didn't increase his speed by much. Before he could swim out of the sea, the 9 black dragons caught up to him and devoured him. However, with the experience of striking the black dragon once, Zhou was even more certain that he could succeed. Now, all he lacked was a way to escape alive. As long as I can rush out of the sea, I can use my flight ability and infinite ghost steps to escape. Even with the 9 dragons art in the water, it's very difficult for me to compare with a real dragon's speed. Therefore, I have to think of a way to strike the black dragon with the poison dragon palm while being as close to the surface as possible, Zhou thought to himself. If he wanted to do it again, Lost Country's teleportation ability could only be used 24 hours later. No, the time interval between Lost Country is too long. The distance of teleportation is too short. How can I think of a way to raise Lost Country to an evolved body and enhance its teleportation ability? Zhou began considering how to advance Lost Country. The God-Fiend era is ever-changing. After condensing the God-Fiend life providence, I have the ability to stay in any space. After condensing Lost Country, I have the ability to teleport. Both of them are related to space. To raise Lost Country, I'm afraid I have to work on space. After some thought, Zhou failed to think of a way to raise Lost Country. Regardless of which zone in the Federation's 4 zones, space was a rather special power attribute. Dimensional creatures with spatial powers were also relatively rare. Typically, none of them were low-grade. They were at the epic stage at the very least. Zhou checked the school's information. Although there were many dimensional zones in the school, there were no spatial dimensional creatures. However, Zhou unexpectedly discovered some useful information. The information had nothing to do with Sunset College. It recorded some strange matters in Guide Ancient City. Among them were records of the Fire God platform and the stone furnace in front of the monument. The information was the same as what Zhou had seen in-game. The only difference was one thing. The stone furnace in-game could spit out a firebird. It was the same in reality. There was a stone saber inserted in the stone furnace in-game, and there was also a stone saber in reality. Zhou had attempted to pull out the saber in-game, but he couldn't touch it. He believed that it was just a phantom, but in reality, someone had also attempted to pull out the stone saber. Although they failed to pull it out, they had touched the stone saber. According to the records, the person who went to Guide Ancient City was a mentor with a fire elemental life providence and a fire elemental life soul. He discovered the Fire God platform in Guide Ancient City and ascended it. He discovered the stone saber in the stone furnace, but when he pulled it out, it seemed to take root. Even with his epic strength, he couldn't move the stone saber at all. That's strange. I can see it in-game, but not touch it, but I can touch it in reality. What's the reason? Zhou had the urge to immediately return to Guide Ancient City to take a look. He wanted to figure out the problem with the stone saber. However, firstly, the school wasn't on vacation. Secondly, entering Guide Ancient City required a pass. Without a pass, it was useless even if he returned. Zhou, the new homework mission has been issued. Shall we go together? Li Xian sent a message. All right, let's meet outside Dragon Gate Grotto. The homework mission still had to be completed, so Zhou arranged to meet Li Xian. The new mentor's mission wasn't as strange as Wang Fei's. It was to hunt 10 mortal stage Dragon Gate stone beasts. These were relatively common mortal stage creatures in Dragon Gate Grotto. To the typical student, it wasn't too difficult. For people like Zhou and Li Xian, it was just a walk. The two of them arrived at Dragon Gate Grotto and randomly chose a relatively nearby grotto to enter. Soon, they saw a few Dragon Gate stone beasts. Li Xian rushed forward and finished them all in no time. I haven't started filming yet, Zhou said with a smile. It's fine. There are plenty of stone beasts anyway. I'll just kill a few later. Li Xian didn't mind. The two continued walking in. Before long, They saw a few students attacking a stone beast. However, the stone beast looked a little special. It was somewhat different from ordinary stone beasts. Chapter 388. The typical stone beast was about half the height of a person. It looked like a Pekingese, and its body was grayish-white rock. However, the stone beast that the students were attacking was somewhat different. The stone beast's body was crystalline like white jade. Furthermore, it was much taller, about the size of a racehorse. The few mortal stage students attacked the stone beast, but their primordial energy skills, such as punches and palms, were useless against the stone beast. As the chances of a companion egg dropping at the mortal stage were too low, the students didn't have any companion beasts. They could only rely on their own strength to fight, but the effects weren't good. One of the students was even injured by the stone beast. When Li Xian saw that it was his classmate, he carried the thunder god sword over and cleaved the stone beast to death to prevent them from being injured by it again. The stone beast was cleaved into two by Li Xian as a crystalline jade egg fell out of its body. It was a companion egg. Holy sh**t. Don't tell me I'm that lucky. Li Xian looked at the companion egg in surprise. Although it was a mutated Dragon Gate stone beast, it was still at the mortal stage. The chances of a companion egg dropping at the mortal stage were almost the same as winning the lottery. For it to drop this time, his luck was indeed good. The students also stared at the companion egg. A mortal companion egg was rare to begin with, and it was a mutated species. Its stats definitely weren't bad, so who wouldn't want it? However, the mutated stone beast was killed by Li Xian. They didn't dare snatch it, but they were unwilling to give it up. After all, they were the ones who discovered the mutated stone beast first. Split the companion egg among yourselves. Li Xian wasn't interested in the mutated stone beast companion egg. He was only helping and had no intention of splitting the loot. The students were overjoyed when they heard that. Two of them were still hesitating, but the other three students had already rushed at the companion egg. The three of them didn't give in to each other as they fought for it. The other two students reacted and joined the fray. Who didn't want to have a companion beast? However, the typical student might not be able to advance to the legendary stage even after 4 years in college. Firstly, it was because the primordial energy art they cultivated wasn't good enough. Secondly, they didn't have enough resources. And lastly, it had to do with their perceptivity. Typical primordial energy arts required one to comprehend them themselves to advance to the next level. For the Lost Immortal Sutra, which could advance once one's stats reach a certain level, it was an anomaly to begin with. Li Xian glanced at his classmates who were vying for the companion egg and curled his lips. Reality is just that cruel. No matter how good our relationship is, once personal interests are involved, classmates and friends aren't worth mentioning. You and I should be thankful that we didn't fall to the point of vying with them. Zhou Wen shook his head and said, that might not be the case. We also need to fight for it. It's just that the things we fight for are of a higher level. There's no difference in essence. The level of sorrow doesn't decrease because of the item's level. That's true. In this world, it's really hard to tell if one is human or demon, Li Xian said with a sigh. Obviously, he thought of his own family again. Even if they were blood brothers, they still couldn't be relied on. Let's go and take a look elsewhere. Zhou Wen didn't wish to continue this topic. Once the dimensional zone's restrictions completely failed in the future, more such things would happen. In order to survive, many people would do anything. Just as the two of them were about to leave, they suddenly heard a bird's cry coming from above. The chick standing on Zhou Wen's shoulder had all its pale golden feathers stand up as though it had encountered an enemy. It looked up into the sky. Zhou Wen was slightly alarmed as he looked up and saw a huge golden bird swoop down from the sky like a golden cloud. Its target was them. Dodge! Zhou Wen felt a sense of danger as he roared at the students. At the same time, he pulled Li Xian and quickly retreated. The students were still vying for the companion eggs, so no one bothered with Zhou Wen. The huge bird that resembled a golden cloud descended. Before the bird arrived, a terrifying hurricane swept down from high above, sending the 5 students flying hundreds of feet away. Some of them slammed into the stone statues, while others fell to the ground. Immediately, all of them spewed out blood, unable to get up. The giant bird swallowed the companion egg in one gulp. Its claws didn't even land on the ground. With a flap of its wings, another hurricane suddenly appeared. Instantly, it flew into the sky and quickly vanished. Zhou Wen and Li Xian stuck to the wall and hugged a Buddha statue with both hands. This prevented them from being blown away by the hurricane. The students weren't that lucky. They tumbled around in the hurricane, leaving their bodies covered in blood. It was unknown if they had died from the impact. That bird, could it be a golden-winged roc? Li Xian looked into the sky and said in surprise, "I don't think so. If it was a golden-winged roc, it would probably be even more terrifying." Zhou Wen shook his head and saw the students screaming incessantly. Although they weren't dead, it was unknown how many of their bones were broken. He didn't dare touch them, nor did he know any healing skills. All he could do was call the school's medical department and get a doctor to rush over to treat them. "Old Zhou, I think the golden bird should be at the top of Dragon Gate Grotto. Why don't we head over to take a look?" Li Xian suggested. Zhou Wen looked at the chick that had calmed down. After some thought, he shook his head and said, "It's best we don't go. That giant bird is probably extraordinary. It's not something we can match." As the two of them spoke, a doctor and tutor rushed over. The first tutor to arrive was Zhou Wen's new tutor. Upon seeing the tragic state of the 5 students, the new tutor couldn't help but frown. What happened? The new tutor, Wu Yuxing, asked Zhou Wen and Li Xian. Li Xian recounted the situation in detail. Wu Yuxing was skeptical when he heard that. He looked above Dragon Gate Grotto and said with a frown, "I haven't heard of bird-type dimensional creatures appearing outside Dragon Gate Grotto. Don't run around. Leave Dragon Gate Grotto immediately. I'll go up and take a look." Wu Yuxing summoned a sword, stepped on it, and soared into the sky, heading towards the top of the mountain. Wow, it's actually a flying sword companion beast. It's really cool. I wanted it for a long time, but flying sword companion beasts are only produced in a few dimensional zones. There are very few of them, and they aren't produced anywhere near us, Li Xian said enviously as he looked at the flying sword beneath Wu Yuxing's feet. Speaking of flying swords, Zhou Wen thought of the little girl and the purple copper flying sword. He glanced at the dead man tree in-game and saw that the purple copper fruit on the dead man tree had already grown to the size of football, but still had no intention of ripening and falling to the ground. Suddenly, a bird's cry shook the surroundings. A golden beam of light shot up from the top of Dragon Gate Grotto. Chapter 389. Zhou Wen looked up and saw that the golden beam was the golden bird that had disappeared into the horizon. At that moment, the bird spread its wings and charged at Wu Yuxing, who was standing in the sky on his sword. Wu Yuxing didn't hesitate. He extended his hand and summoned another flying sword companion beast. An ancient sword with a sharp sword beam tore through the air like a sunset as it slashed at the golden bird. The golden bird dodged as well. With a flap of its wings, it tore through the sword beams that filled the sky and clashed with the flying sword. The flying sword split into two behind the golden bird. Wu Yuxing's expression changed drastically as he turned around and ran on his flying sword. The Heavenly Cloud Sword was a top-notch epic companion beast that he had painstakingly endured in the Mount Shu dimensional zone for a long time. The Heavenly Cloud Sword Flash could split mountains and shatter rocks. Its life soul, Sunglow Sword Soul, could enhance the Heavenly Cloud Sword Flash, splitting it into a rain of swords, turning it from a single sword flash into an area of effect attack. After he obtained the Heavenly Cloud Sword, he had experienced countless battles, but the Heavenly Cloud Sword had never been damaged. Now, with just a touch of the golden bird's wings, it had snapped into two. He immediately knew how terrifying the golden bird was. Although the flying sword beneath Wu Yuxing's feet was fast, it wasn't as fast as the golden bird. Before he could fly far, the golden bird had already rushed behind him like a golden bolt of lightning. Wu Yuxing was alarmed as he hurriedly used the flying sword beneath his feet to meet the golden bird. He landed on a mountain wall and ran down the mountain in a sorry state. Stop watching. Let's go. Zhou pulled Li Xian and ran. Even an epic tutor couldn't defeat the golden bird. In a while, the golden bird might unleash its ferocious nature and massacre Dragon Gate Grotto. When that happened, it would be too late to escape. Crack! The two of them hadn't even taken 2 steps when they heard another crisp sound. They saw that the rainbow-like sword beam was directly cut apart by the giant bird's wings. Even the flying sword was cut apart. The giant bird's wings were unimaginably sharp. Wu Yuxing was still fleeing, but how could he be faster than the golden bird? Before long, he was caught up to. He was about to be killed by the golden bird's wings. Suddenly, a figure tore through the air. The person was dressed in the attire of a tutor and appeared on the mountaintop of Dragon Gate Grotto as though he had teleported. With a flick of his finger, a yellow talisman flew towards the golden bird. The giant golden bird's expression didn't change in the face of the sharp flying sword, but when it saw the light talisman, it was a little worried. It actually flapped its wings and let Wu Yuxing go, dodging the light talisman. The teacher, who had broken through the air, flicked his fingers repeatedly. Light talismans shot out from his fingers and rained down on the giant golden bird. The golden bird flapped its wings, and golden feathers of light shot out from its wings, colliding with the runes of light. Light exploded everywhere in the sky. The people who had set up stalls outside Dragon Gate Grotto were already scrambling to escape. Zhou and Li Xian were also fleeing, but when they reached the borders of Dragon Gate Grotto, they didn't directly leave. Instead, they watched from afar as the tutor fought the golden bird in midair. The golden bird was abnormally ferocious as it charged at the tutor with a golden feather storm. The light talisman produced by the tutor was also destroyed by the feather storm, failing to deal any damage to the golden bird. Just as Zhou was worried that the tutor would be defeated by the bird like Wu Yuxing, he suddenly saw a black luster spewing out from his white uniform. The black luster condensed in front of him and turned into a huge black pipe organ. It looked a little like a piano with black and white keys, but it was even bigger. Furthermore, behind the pipe organ were black metal pipes arranged like a small mountain. Furthermore, the keys were like stairs with many levels, unlike ordinary pianos that only had 1 row of keys. The tutor ignored the charging golden bird and calmly sat in front of the pipe organ, pressing his slender fingers on the keys. Zhou and Li Xian immediately heard an ancient and melodious sound. It was indeed different from the ordinary piano music Zhou had heard in the past. The sound of the piano clearly lacked the heavy and distant feeling of the pipe organ. It appeared, that's Chancellor Lung's demonic organ throne. That's the man who once fought God. Li Xian looked at the tutor in the sky in pleasant surprise. Chancellor Lung? The chancellor of our college who doesn't care about matters? Zhou was slightly surprised. He had been at Sunset College for so long, but he had never seen such a proper chancellor. Usually, it was the managing vice-chancellor who presided over the school's affairs. It should be, although I've never seen him, his demonic organ throne is too famous. There's no mistake. Back when Old Master passed away, the Yin family was without a leader. The Senate wanted to bring Sunset College under the Federation's management, so they sent a member of Senator Dugu's family with a mythical companion beast. However, he was rejected by Chancellor Lung's demonic organ throne. He didn't even enter the school's gates before returning dejectedly. Even a mythical companion beast couldn't break through the demonic organ throne. Back then, the demonic organ throne's fame had already spread throughout the Federation. Everyone knew about it, Li Xian said excitedly. As Li Xian spoke, Chancellor Lung's slender fingers were already dancing on the keys. A desolate and atmospheric music sounded from the pipe organ. The sound waves in the metal pipes reverberated and spread out like ripples. The golden bird was charging ferociously at Chancellor Lung with a golden feather storm, but when it heard the music, its movements slowed down. By the time it flew to the side of the organ, it had already retracted the golden feather storm. The ferocity on its face had vanished as well. It didn't continue attacking. It retracted its wings and stood beside the organ as though it was listening to Chancellor Lung's music. Zhou was also listening to the music. Unknowingly, tears rolled down his cheeks. By the side, Li Xian's face was already covered in tears. The human students who didn't manage to escape Dragon Gate Grotto in time were also in tears. Zhou wiped the tears on his face and focused his gaze at the golden bird in the sky. He saw a crystalline tear seeping out from the corner of the golden bird's eye, as though it would fall at any moment. Chancellor Lung's life soul is actually a pipe organ. This is really rare. However, my emotions don't seem to be affected by the music. Why am I crying? Zhou looked at the demonic organ throne in the sky in bewilderment. At that moment, a tear finally rolled down from the corner of the golden bird's eye. It fell from the sky like a golden gem. The chick that had been standing on Zhou's shoulder suddenly flew up and arrived in front of Dragon Gate Grotto. It swallowed the golden bird's tear before flying back to Zhou's shoulder. The music in the sky had already stopped. Chancellor Lung glanced at Zhou and the chick on his shoulder. His calm eyes seemed to have the power to see through one's heart, leaving Zhou slightly alarmed. Chapter 390. However, Chancellor Lung's gaze didn't linger on them for too long. After taking a glance, he retracted his gaze and looked at the golden bird beside him. Go back. No one will disturb you from now on. Chancellor Lung seemed to be speaking to the golden bird. The golden bird actually lowered its head as though to indicate that it understood. Then it spread its wings and flew back to the peak of Dragon Gate Grotto. From today onwards, no one is allowed to reach the peak of Dragon Gate Grotto. Chancellor Lung stood up, and the demonic organ throne vanished. After saying that, it tore through the air and vanished in the blink of an eye. When can I be as powerful as Chancellor Lung? To be able to make such a terrifying dimensional creature obey me with a flick of my finger, Li Xian said enviously. Is Chancellor Lung at the mythical stage? Zhou asked with a frown. I don't think so. I heard that he's at the peak of the epic stage. The demonic organ throne is a perfect life soul. Furthermore, some people say that Chancellor Lung might be the person closest to the mythical stage. He's just half a step away from stepping into the mythical stage. Li Xian's words were filled with admiration for Chancellor Lung. There's actually such a powerful person in Luoyang. Zhou exclaimed. He's definitely strong. Chancellor Lung is overseer and mentor. How can he not be strong to be able to teach such a strong student like overseer? Li Xian said. And Tianzua's mentor? Zhou didn't think it was impressive to be able to teach in Tianzua, but Chancellor Lung was truly powerful. The music-type life soul of the demonic organ throne had also broadened Zhou's horizons. He had never heard of it being able to make such a terrifying dimensional creature retreat without bloodshed. Thinking back to the music from the demonic organ throne, Zhou had a nagging feeling that something was amiss. Zhou wasn't an emotional person. When he was listening to the music, his emotions didn't fluctuate much, but he had actually cried. This didn't seem right. Is it really the demonic organ throne's music that affected my emotions? Zhou had a nagging feeling that it wasn't the case. Why are you in a daze? Let's go. We still have to complete the homework mission. Li Xian gave Zhou a nudge when he saw him standing there in silence and in a daze. Zhou followed Li Xian back to Dragon Gate Grotto, but he kept thinking about the music that Chancellor Lung had played with the demonic organ throne. It's not the music that's affecting my mood, definitely not. Others might not care about such minute changes, but Zhou wanted to figure out the difference. He kept thinking about what he felt was amiss. Why are you in a daze? I've completed my homework mission. It's your turn, Li Xian said as he filmed Zhou with his phone. Zhou wasn't in the mood to do any homework missions. He immediately drew his bamboo blade and charged at the stone beast horde. With each strike, he killed 10 stone beasts cleanly before turning head back. He planned to go back and do some research on sound-type powers, then figure out if it was the demonic organ throne's music that affected his emotions, or if it was some other power. Li Xian was already used to Zhou Wen's strange actions, so he let him be and didn't ask further. After leaving Dragon Gate Grotto, Zhou Wen went to the school's library. The information there was categorized and was much more complete than on the internet. Soon, he found a music type area. He saw a bookshelf that was dozens of meters long. There were 4 rows of books, and they were all related to music type books. Zhou Wen took a look and saw that most of them were music scores and books on music knowledge, or books that taught singing. It was rare to see music type primordial energy arts. It's no wonder there are so few people who cultivate music type primordial energy arts. There's so much information, but it's just teaching people how to learn music. It has nothing to do with cultivation. Zhou Wen read through the books on the bookshelf one by one. After searching for a long time, he only found a few books related to music type primordial energy arts. From the little information he had, Zhou Wen realized that music type primordial energy arts were indeed interesting, or rather different. The cultivation method of music type primordial energy arts was similar to ordinary primordial energy arts. Interestingly, the primordial energy C of music type primordial energy arts was relatively special. Typically, the primordial energy C of a primordial energy art was in one of the 3 dantians. However, music type primordial energy arts used the lungs as the primordial energy C. This was very rare. Furthermore, it was different from what most people imagined. There was no mention of music infecting emotions in the music type information. It only mentioned the theory of audio frequency and oscillation. And the destructive power of music type powers mainly came from the pressure of sound. Zhou Wen read a lot of information, but he didn't understand why the demonic organ throne could affect the emotions of humans and even dimensional creatures. Although there were some extraordinary theories, they hadn't been proven. Furthermore, Zhou Wen felt that the theories didn't match the power of the demonic organ throne. Without finding the answer he wanted, Zhou Wen wanted to directly ask Chancellor Long, but even tutors and the other vice-chancellors rarely met him. As a student, how could he meet him? The sky darkened and the library was about to close. All Zhou Wen could do was return to his dorm and search for music-type information online, but he didn't find the answer he wanted. However, while browsing the school forum, Zhou Wen saw a thread regarding music-type primordial energy arts. The name and content of the thread were novel to Zhou Wen. The thread's name was The Spatial Dimension of Sound. The person who posted it was a student's ID. He received relatively little attention, with only a few dozen clicks. There were also few replies. There were very few people in Sunset College who cultivated music-type primordial energy arts to begin with, so few people were interested in this thread. However, Zhou Wen's eyes lit up when he saw it. Although the content of the thread was somewhat strange and unrealistic, the ideas were very interesting. After reading the thread, Zhou Wen seemed to understand why the demonic organ throne could affect his emotions. However, there were many things he couldn't figure out. He couldn't find the answers to all his questions from a thread. Zhou Wen saw that the thread was posted 2 years ago, and the author's ID wasn't online. He couldn't help but feel disappointed when he saw that there was only one thread. From the looks of it, the other party wasn't someone who often logged into the forum. Zhou Wen attempted to send a private message to the other party, hoping to give it a try. He raised a few questions that troubled him. Zhou Wen originally didn't hold much hope, but to his surprise, the other party replied to his message not long after. Furthermore, he had answered his questions in detail. There were some strange explanations that Zhou Wen had never heard of, but they answered the questions on his mind. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.